how they just keep coming out with new webcams, new webcams.
See what's going on in the in-game voice chat.
Okay. Sorry guys, just 1 second. Dude, man, I am the worst. It is true. El Noog, it's bloody.
Use your words, Barjo.
Bloody mate, bloody old, bloody. Whoa, mate.
Alright, need help.
Hang on.
Need help.
Hang on.
Very unwell.
Hang on.
Let's...
Hang on.
I have a Jeep out here.
Be right back.
What a legend. That's a mega donation. What a legend. Oh.
Wow. All I got was this shitty crossbow, man. Oh shit. No! No. I thought he... No. I thought he... No. I thought he... Wow.
I don't understand this guy's allowed to stream his job. He doesn't get in trouble for that? It seems like there'd be a big liability meme or something, no? I don't know if, I don't know where this person is at. I'm not really sure what's going on right now. We're supposed to be doing this now? Oh, he got permission? Nice. Two PM Pacific. That's now, right?
trust me. What you're seeing now is my normal state. This is a Super Saiyan. And this is what is known as a Super Saiyan that has ascended past a Super Saiyan. And this is to go even further beyond!
Flow of time itself is convoluted. The very fabric wavers and relations shift.
Every moment. It's infinitely complex. They have access to infinite time and space, but they're not bound by anything. They can't find a specific place in time. They can communicate. That's why I'm here. I'm gonna find a way. Still know. Just like I found this morning. How? That's it. We code the data into the movement of the second aim. Translate the data into Morse and give it to me.
Translating data to Morse.
Finally, I have found it. And there we are.
Good job, guys.
I've never really found heroes particularly interesting.
Wow.
Eating hamburgers is how I buck society. By the way, I didn't know Blue Microphone supports incest.
Nice. Interesting, man. I'll save this and listen to this another time. The fuck is this thing? Wait, is this gonna meme on me? Hold on. No, okay. What? I don't know what this is.
This is the front panel of the dishwasher. It came scratched.
Oh, we should call him and get another one?
I'll write it down for you to do.
Yeah, sure.
Irma is still about 100 miles out, but we're already starting to see flooding. This is an area called Manatee Bay Marina. It's a neighborhood here, and you can see this is a road that has been completely flooded out.
Damn, Daniel. Damn, Daniel.
Your girl knows I've got the sauce. No ketchup. Just sauce. Raw sauce. Boom. Yo. God. The thing goes grrrr. Pop, 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 pop. Skinny kid pop, pop. And the poop, 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 boom. Skia. Toot, 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 boom. Boom, boom. You done know. Big shock. Yo. Yeah, yeah.
I just turned Slaughterhouse to a quintet, began a trend set, murdered a friend's pet, made shit as ill as it can get, went in depth like a fucking vignette, and 2 bars, skin's wet, I'm already covered in sweat, and I wasn't even ready to come in yet. Ah! Let me set this drink down, beat up a gal, start beef with a pal. Probably be wild till I'm wrinkled and senile. The rap god was a freestyle off the top of the dome piece while I was asleep on the couch. And I'm freestyling now. I need a towel, sweat leaks from my brow. It's burning my eyes, my cerebral is foul. Cause shit I'm thinking about should be illegal. I need my headband. Like the guy who left Cleveland, Ohio and went to South Beach with his talents. Scream fuck you.
Literally just got fired. Anyone know any good jobs that don't involve selling my body or drugs?
I'm singling out, cause you're so...
Here comes redemption to buy the equalizer. Here comes redemption to buy the front line some more time. Lock and popped as well. Off they go. Naganar pulls in. Only is the equalizer. Here comes redemption to buy the front line some more time. Lock and popped as well. Off they go. Naganar pulls in. Only is the equalizer.
What's the point of this? I'm sorry, Fancy Sloth.
Here comes redemption to buy the front line some more time. Lock and popped as well. Off they go. Naganar pulls in. Only is the equalizer. Here comes redemption to buy the front line some more time. Lock and popped as well. Off they go. Naganar pulls in. Only is the...
Holy shit. How does Laka give so much HP? Yeah, I saw that. What is this?
Wow, this is amazing. First of all, first question.
Twitch
Is
channel.
my voice carrying better this way or is the mic better? What do you like better? Hi. Hold on, give me 1 second. What do you like better? Hi. Hold on, give me 1 second. 1 second, 1 second. Can you hear this way? Is this easier with the microphone, or is it better?
Don't touch me.
Microphone?
Don't anybody touch me, or
Yeah.
I will contact the police immediately. I would like to know, call the police.
So just 1 second. Let's just, what do we believe in? We believe in love and courage, right? Love and courage. Love and courage. We believe in love. We believe in love and courage. Absolutely. Absolutely we do. We believe in love and courage. We believe in an inclusive Canada where no one's left behind. We believe in building a Canada that ensures that there's economic justice for everybody, right? And that's what we believe in. So my friend, yeah, that's it. And you are wonderful. And let's just say, as Canadians, do we believe in celebrating all diversity? Do we believe in celebrating diversity? Give it a round of applause for diversity. A round of applause for diversity. All right.
Okay.
Do it.
No.
Until Twitch I'll do it.
No. Listen, I got pictures to take. I got to be looking good.
Okay. Wait, but you're so short. Your center of gravity is really low.
Wait.
How am I gonna knock you over?
Wait, what is that? Oh.
No, you know what I mean?
What happened? Wait,
Uh-oh. No, you're like really good at sumo wrestling.
I think my headset fucked up. That's weird. Anyway. It'll be fun.
Until Twitch I'll do it.
We got this new thing called classism. It's racist.
All I got was this shitty crossbow, man.
I already watched this.
Oh shit. No! No!
Have you heard anything from Blaire since you rescheduled? I said that today I had an engagement at 5:30 PST. I said our convo will probably be way shorter than that though, so it doesn't matter. Because that's like, we would have to do a 4-hour convo for that to run over. And then she said, I'll get back to you early in the morning. I'm out now. And that was 14 hours ago.
Is Deezer still alive? And is it weird if I let my dog sniff my butt? PLS answer. Maybe Blaire White has to pick up her child today. HMM Steiny.
this an old Dream Theater song?
Looking around, I noticed this Saturday, I don't know if you're aware of it, was 420. And so it was a madhouse over there.
It's April 20th?
No, 420. Yeah, it was April 20th, but 420. You know 420.
No, what's that?
How do you not know? You've never heard of 420? Well, it's a big deal. I mean, it's real popular in the culture right now, and everybody's wearing 420 shirts, and you see 420 bumper stickers, and everyone's talking about it.
You can get rid of your bed.
Light him up.
Sorry, Patrick.
What
Me? I got all excited, man. Where am I getting shot from? Oh.
He was at that.
Wait.
He's at this tree.
Oh, that makes more sense. Bro, I'm freaking out, dude.
You can get rid of your bed.
What
Me?
I got all excited. Sorry, Patrick.
What
I mean, he flicks to this spot too, where there's nobody there, right? Sorry, Patrick.
What
Me?
I frankly, I was a little embarrassed too.
Where did they come up? Why is it 420?
Well, I was wondering the same thing actually, because years ago I saw it for the first time, and I never bothered to look it up. But I figured since I'm on the podcast with you now as your sidekick, I thought I'd maybe research it.
You researched
researched
something?
420, the origin of 420. Finally answered my question.
We're not supposed to research anything.
Well, I was told differently.
Well, how am I supposed to carry on an intelligent conversation when I didn't research it?
I mean, you got a computer. Look, I'll be honest. I just Wikipedia'd it. You can just.
Okay, I'll fucking research it. What's it called?
I think I broke your computer, Daniel.
What is it? What is it?
Just dump it off the top of it. Dump it out.
You just go on Wikipedia. Go on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And go to 420.
Okay.
And then type in 420 origins, or just type in 420. That's all I did.
Okay, I got it.
All right, good. So now we're on the same page, right?
Right.
You're on there?
Yeah.
All right. So this is what they say. 420 is a code term used primarily in North America that refers to the consumption of cannabis and, by extension, a way to identify oneself with cannabis subculture.
That's not what mine says.
What does yours say?
Mine says 420 was the birthday of Austrian-born German politician and the leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, a fella went by the name of Adolf Hitler.
Observances based on the number 420 include smoking cannabis around the time 4:20 p.m. as well as on the date April 20th.
No, what date is that? What year?
This was around 1970.
No, this is 1945. What kind of computer do you have?
It's a Mac, Norm. It's a Mac.
Mine's a Dell. I like a Dell.
I know, we covered that.
But this guy, there's a picture of him.
Wait, what? This is pre-set up so hard. This is my Dell notebook. Wait, what? This is such a bit. What?
Covered that.
But this guy, there's a picture of him. Adolf Hitler, very compelling kind of a figure. Odd-looking duck, but there's something about his eyes. Hypnotic.
Anyway, a widely discussed story says that a group of teenagers in San Rafael, California, used the term in connection to a
Literally everything it does is a bit. Yeah, but like, I mean, like, this is like pre-set up. Isn't Norm usually kind of like an off-the-head kind of jokester dude? Like, not like running like a skit, right? This is like we're watching a skit now. We're not watching like a Norm doing Norm stuff.
71 plan to search for an abandoned cannabis crop that they had learned about.
His eyes are almost entirely black. He was a decorated veteran of World War I.
His podcast has little skills. Oh yeah, I don't know anything about his podcast.
Hold the fort. He hated Jews.
These guys, they plan to meet precisely.
You know what he reminds me of? Dave. My best friend
buddy.
Dave.
Yeah, I know Dave.
That guy hates Jews.
He sure does. I hear about it all the time.
I'm thinking of breaking up our friendship.
It's probably a good idea.
But anyways, you know what? I'm sick of these kind of characters. I think we should kill Hitler. Me and you go suicide, kill him.
Right. It's like he died 50 years ago,
Did
probably.
he? I didn't even know he was sick.
He wasn't. Well, no, that's fine.
I wish I could find a Hitler of today and go kill him.
Wow. All right, we're going to do a substitute debate, I guess, because this guy messaged me this morning.
Are you going to do a voice
No.
for your D&D character?
I'm not.
If so, I suggest the Dragon Lore Kid voice. Also, can you unban me? I wanna watch chat again.
I don't even know what you're banned from. From Twitch chat?
Rated T for teen.
You know that treasure hunting is not the risk averse, right?
I'd say we can use all the luck we can get. Don't!
You're not unbanned from Twitch, or you're not banned in Twitch or Destiny, GG. I don't even know what you want to ban from.
Sorry, mate.
PlayStation.
Why did I click? Why was I given this stream to watch? Okay. Wait, how many viewers does this shit get? 2,700. What a god. Huh. 47 hours of streams in the last 14 days. 77 in the last 30 days, mate. Why does her butt only have weight at the bottom? The type of outfit that she's wearing is not good for showing off your booty, I don't think. Because normally you would have it cut either higher or lower. Instead of right in the middle, is always going to look really weird, I think.
You don't look that great either. You're kind of balding, and you.
Where does this balding meme come from? Am I really balding? Where did this meme start at? I try to find like I I could usually find like the progenitor of like propaganda against me. Like when everybody starts using a certain insult against me, I can usually find where it comes from. Like when that day that everybody started tweeting at me that I was a midget, I saw Mr. Medicare was doing that shit. Like, so it kind of made sense. But like, am I really balding? I don't know where this meme comes from, but okay. I should start shaving my head progressively further and further back.
Obviously, don't dress very well. I saw your Twitter avatar. We kind of know what you wish to look like, and well, you're like a 4 out of 10. Like that's the best way I can explain it. You don't talk about people's appearance if you're not gonna if you don't look good.
I said all women would go down. Is the reason I think the plot of the book wouldn't.
Oh no! This is really awkward. I'm sorry. Is this a trans person? I'm so confused right now. This was the person I was arguing with on Twitter. I thought I was arguing with something else. Someone else. What the fuck? Is this video for real? 23-minute video like this?
Let me quote on you on this. Alright, so this is what you said.
To a debate, you said, come on my show. I'm going to take a stance that's pro-incest. So you make an opening statement that's pro-incest.
Okay. Here is my opening pro-incest statement then, okay? I'm sorry.
Great.
Tell me if
so
you've done it. Yep.
You're speaking in support of incest.
Sure. So
on Twitch.
Okay. Alright, so he said, no bullshit said, so you're speaking in support of pro-incest. And he goes, sure. So the followers that I was arguing with on Twitter for like multiple parts of the day saying he didn't say that, he just did and it's on record, and telling me that he didn't fucking say that because he just did, and I don't want to hear, oh, but he's trying to make a point. I'm like, oh, people that don't lie is wrong. Okay, so you want to go fuck your brother, go fuck your brother, but just know that when you have a fucking baby that looks like fucking little freaky ass Newton from Hills of Eyes, then don't complain to people who try to warn you that Bible was wrong, because we have. And like countless of people try to tell him why incest is wrong, and he makes videos saying, "No, I didn't say that. I don't say that."
Okay, we're not ever talking to this person. I'm sorry. Well, hey, what's up, my dude?
Hey, Destiny, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, hey, what's going on?
Nothing much.
Okay, so here's the thing. My wife and I, we were sitting watching your various debates.
Uh-oh.
And we were watching you debating No Bullshit, which was highly entertaining. And my wife's like, hey, you should go on there and debate Destiny.
Okay.
Okay, so here's my background. I'm an economist by training, and the stance I want to take, right? And I don't know what... I've watched some of your debates in the past, but I don't know where you exactly stand. But I'm defending Trump's policies and Trumpism, whether it's his economic policies, his foreign policy, and on immigration.
Gotcha. And you said you're a libertarian?
No, I'm an ex-libertarian.
Oh, so now you're the opposite of a libertarian if you support Trump, or...
I'm kind of like a third way, so like a protectionist.
How do you... Okay.
Yeah. So I used to be, to give you some background, like in the late 2000s, I used to be like a Cato Institute type libertarian, and I've sort of moved away from that. I mean, I'm not completely anti-libertarianism in general, but I started to move towards this like third direction type ideology, especially in economics.
Gotcha. I mean, if you're a hardcore protectionist, then I mean, Trump's policies are probably good for you. So it would be more of a conversation of protectionism versus, I guess, open markets.
Yeah, I guess if you wanted to do that, yeah, absolutely.
When you say an economist, what kind of background does that imply?
So I got my bachelor's and master's in economics, and then I currently work for a bank. I don't want to give away too many details. Looking at economics, it's not actually, it's a specific subsector of economics, but I don't want to get too in specific.
Gotcha. I mean, I can ask you questions, but I mean, if this is your level of education, this is going to be pretty far beyond most of what I'd be capable of talking about, I would imagine.
Oh, no, don't worry. I mean, I love debates of, anything, so, yeah.
I guess, like, most of my questions would just have to do with, like, Econ 101 concepts. I don't understand. I guess, so in terms of protectionism, how does that not end in a worse result for almost every player involved if we're artificially restricting our access to trade across borders?
Okay, so one of the key things, I used to be somebody that's like complete free trade, the dogma works, right? This is a good ideology. But over time, as I studied different sectors, I started to realize that free trade is a myth. It's largely a myth. It's
okay,
like a false dogma. Yeah,
sure.
Go ahead.
Before we go too far into this, okay, so that we don't waste time talking about retarded shit. I
Yeah.
understand that 100% open, free everything is dumb. I do acknowledge that market failures exist, and I do acknowledge that government probably should serve a key role in helping to alleviate market failures or to prevent them from happening. I definitely acknowledge that exists. I'm not a libertarian, I don't think, by any stretch of the imagination, but I do believe in the power of markets. So okay, so I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that like we should have no restrictions and no licensing and no regulation on anything or whatever like that. I won't try to make that argument. Okay.
Sure, yeah. I won't try to straw man you either. But I do think he's right on trade. Like, he's absolutely 100% right. And if you look at particularly the commodity sector, whether it's like aluminum manufacturing in the United States, steel manufacturing, a lot of small-scale industrial production, we are 100% getting ripped off on trade. Like, Trump's completely right about that.
When you say getting ripped off, what do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is there's two types of ways you could be outcompeted, right?
Okay.
One is where another company in another country produces a better product, either more efficiently or they have better value or whatever, and then they defeat your home industries. That's not a problem. But what's happening right now with Mexico, with China, with Southeast Asia and the like—
they're subsidizing their products?
They're not only subsidizing their products, via the government and cheap credit, they're also via their currency. They're devaluing their currency so that they can outproduce us. And they're subsidizing their product through like lower wages, lower environmental standards, and the like. And so a lot of
aren't we just stealing from that country then?
What do you mean?
So let's say that I have a steel manufacturer in America. Let's say there's a steel manufacturer in China. Okay. Let's say that we manufacture steel in America and we can buy that steel for, I'm using arbitrary numbers, $100 a ton or whatever. All right. Let's say that China decides to subsidize their industry so they can produce that steel for a lower cost and we can purchase it for $80 a ton or whatever. Aren't we effectively just taking money from China to do that then? If China wants to subsidize their industry and pay extra money into that to shore up the differences, to increase their margins or whatever, don't we just take advantage of that in the form of lower costs for goods?
Yeah, that's true. That's totally true. But I don't think that's sustainable over the long term, or it's actually healthy, because you don't actually have an efficient market operating on a global scale.
But when
and moreover, the thing to understand when it comes to like factories and that is that there are positive externalities to factories. So one of these big libertarian arguments, or even liberal arguments, right, is this idea that we outsource all of our manufacturing to China or overseas, or all of our lower tier manufacturing, and then Americans do the high tech jobs like as engineers or product designers.
Yeah, moving over to a service economy, sure.
Yeah, but that's fake. That's like fake news. It's totally a meme and it's a myth, because what happens is that if you start to study factories, having production domestically, it has positive externalities in terms of research and production, development of these things, and the high tech jobs and the like. So a really good example of this is the semiconductor industry, right? Semiconductors are high-value manufacturing. We used to make them exclusively in the United States. Because we don't have tariffs, other countries like Taiwan and that were able to undercut us. They took the semiconductor manufacturing, and in terms of engineering or research and development, all that is currently being done overseas. So all these high-value jobs were lost. So I think that we need to view factories as like universities. We need to keep as many of them as possible here because there's a lot of positive externalities that a simple cost-benefit equation can't really capture.
Okay, but when you say there are positive, I feel like you're. Oof. Okay, so please correct me if I say anything incorrect. Okay, but
go ahead.
It sounds to me like I hear an agenda when you're speaking. So when you say factories only produce a positive externality, you're ignoring three very important things here. One, factories produce a negative externality, and two, service jobs produce positives and negative externalities. These are all things that you would have to take into account as well, right? A factory existing, for instance, might have some positive externality of, and you're arguing what are these that
research and development. So there are negative, like pollution and the like. Totally agree with that.
Pollution, and
but
also
there are a lot of
opportunity costs as well. Workers that might be trained or educated to work in factories could instead be trained and educated to work in the higher paying service jobs, ideally as well, right? So there's an opportunity cost there that for every factory worker, maybe you could have had a computer scientist or an engineer or something too, right?
No, but that's where I'm strongly disagreeing. I think that's where this like liberal model of trade is completely wrong, because the engineering jobs and the high value service jobs support the factory, and they're built and they're clustered around where you have production, manufacturing, production, and development. So again, one of these key liberal arguments is that we just outsource manufacturing overseas. We take advantage of the engineering jobs or the professor jobs and the like, and look, we're moving up the value chain. But in actuality, that doesn't happen. In actuality, the economy starts to stagnate because you don't get these higher value jobs. So Trump is completely right in putting up tariffs against China and Mexico and all the like, because we need these jobs here in the United States.
Wait, I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm not understanding this, like the higher value jobs and what, like, if the factories produced so many positive externalities, why weren't we able to capture that in the form of revenue that kept the factories here? Like, it seems like the market disagrees with your assertion that these factories were worth keeping around if it's so easy to outsource them and maintain the service sector here. What's going on here? How did this happen?
No, because in terms of capturing the value, the calculation is different for a country compared to a corporation. So it might be really efficient for a corporation. Like, a corporation's soulless. A corporation doesn't have any loyalties, right? It has no problem exporting its value chain to another country. It has no problem exporting its research and development to another country. It's just looking at
R&D still occurs like in the United States, no? Like, Silicon Valley exists not because it's a giant manufacturing hub. Like, why does R&D have to be attached to factories? I don't think that's necessarily true, is it?
It is true. Like, Silicon Valley is a narrow area. You're looking at you're looking at software and development, right? And like software, various different products. But there's more than just software. There's manufacturing of different types, like automobile manufacturing, appliance manufacturing, chemical manufacturing. Like, we still have a lot of that here, but we've lost a lot of it. And I'm arguing that, like, this model where you just outsource manufacturing and you expect to climb the value chain, it just doesn't work. Like, look at Germany, look at Japan, and look at South Korea. These are very high-wage economies. They're wealthy economies, but they also practice a lot of protectionism to keep the key jobs there. Like Germany, it has not only jobs for people, without a college degree in terms of training and the like, it also has engineering jobs and the like. There's a lot of, it flows together.
If this was true, wouldn't we expect to see, like, these major American companies shut down and more overseas companies open up in these other countries? Like, where are all of the major Chinese service companies that are now servicing America, and why hasn't, like, Intel and Amazon and Apple all shut down, since it's impossible to do any R&D without being attached to the factories?
Well, Intel, Amazon, and Apple, like, their business model is different, right? So they're assembling things, and then they really do, like, marketing and design, and then they sell it over here. But if you look, like Apple, most of the manufacturing and most of the research for their high value add products, like the actual components, it's not being done in the United States. It's being done overseas through, like, subsidiaries, like Qualcomm and the like.
Manufacturing is being done overseas, but, like, the companies are still based in the U.S. A lot of the engineers and service jobs are still in the U.S., no?
Yeah. No. For like the design in that, but not for, like, the design of the hardware and everything like that. And that's, like, a small segment of the overall economy, because there's more than just, like, making iPhones for people. There's making lots of different industrial products. Like the Germans are leaders in automobile manufacturing. The Germans are leaders in engineering and, like, capital good manufacturing, because they've kept a protectionist regime that's kept a lot of that here.
I guess I'm just not seeing. So I guess like the original claim was that R&D has to be attached to factories, but now it seems like there's an exception for every company I mentioned, and then there's a reason why we haven't seen the horrible ill effects of this. So I don't know. It seems kind of flimsy. I don't know. Like, what are some like major drawbacks? Here, let me ask you this, I guess, to make an argument.
Yeah.
What are like some like what's like an example of like a major fuck up that I see in the United States now as a result of exporting some manufacturing jobs? Like, where can I see these damages aside from the loss of manufacturing jobs in the U.S.? Like, where do I see these as being, like, what's the damage?
Okay, let's look at the aluminum industry, for example. The United States was, after the Second World War, we were a major leader in aluminum production. I mean, we basically controlled the world's aluminum production and export. And aluminum is actually a high value add good because you're taking this metal and then you can turn it into a lot of different appliances and the like. And it, for our strategic basis, it really makes sense for us to keep that here. But one of the things we've done through open markets and through having no protectionism is that China has been able to subsidize their own domestic aluminum manufacturing sector. They keep power costs low. They completely subsidize it through import VATs and tariffs. And as a result, they're putting thousands of people out of work in the industrial Midwest and throughout the country by researching, designing, and out-producing us in aluminum.
Okay, so maybe we can revisit this argument. So if that was true, we'll assume that everything given is true. Isn't China just subsidizing ultimately our own businesses? Like, I don't see how that exactly is a negative. Like, if another country wants to pour a bunch of money into a product, then we'll just sit there and take advantage of it in the form of lower costs of goods, no?
Yeah, but it doesn't... I mean, like, that's true. So in one sense, I see what you're saying, and that's right. Like, we'll get cheaper aluminum from China pouring it in. But we also lose all the associated industries based around the aluminum value chain.
Yeah, but
those high-end jobs.
This is how economies work, though, right? If another country wants to subsidize that, that can be their comparative advantage. Then we will move our workers into another part of the economy. No, isn't that how economies just kind of like grow and evolve over time? Like,
well, okay. Here's another thing to consider. I want to address that. So this is going to go directly to it, right?
Okay.
A lot of the free trade theories were developed under David Ricardo in the 18th century, where you had a model with lots of small producers and small suppliers. So like the classic examples like wine and cloth. Portugal manufactures wine, the UK manufactures cloth. But like in reality, the real world, we don't have a system where you have lots of small manufacturers and producers for a lot of goods, right? There's only a few key producers in various segments of the economy. Like,
well, yeah, these are addressed in basic economics. You're talking about achieving like an economy of scale, right? You're talking about barriers to entry that have to be crossed in order to become a major manufacturer that can compete with other markets.
No, not necessarily. I'm just saying, like, the tendency, the model is towards monopolistic production, okay? Or you know, where you have a few key producers, right?
Okay.
So here you should view trade as a way of like capturing the top producers. And if the United States doesn't have protectionist regimes, say if there's 4 producers of aluminum in the world, another country can capture that aluminum corporation or that production, that value chain, and then they get all the associated positive externalities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but it's going back to the it just goes back to the argument that them subsidizing it gives them a massive advantage. So let's use an industry, I guess, that everybody is intimately familiar with. If we were to enact a protectionist policy, let's say that so for a while, fracking became very lucrative and profitable in the United States because the cost of oil was rising. We were past 120, 130, maybe up to 150 a barrel. I don't remember. Oil was getting insanely expensive. So all of these fracking companies started to pop up in the United States. But then as time went on, OPEC's production continued. The demand for oil that was projected for China started to fall. We saw oil prices fall all around the world. So a lot of the fracking companies in the United States were kind of hurt by that, by the slowing down of China. So in your world, it seems like you would advocate, well, instead of letting OPEC and in Canada and Venezuela, whatever, these people do all the oil production, let's increase, you know, the cost of importing oil so that we can continue to have our fracking companies exist. So you would do that. You would protect your fracking industry. They would continue to enjoy good money. The jobs would be protected and all of that. But now every other industry in the United States would have to suffer because they would be paying the higher prices of that gasoline. It seems like you could make the same argument, or oil, I'm sorry. You can make the same argument for every single industry, no?
Well, so wait. Just slow down for a second.
Yeah, sure.
I just want to. So you would say I would argue under a protectionist regime, you put up tariffs on oil to protect the frackers, right?
Yeah, to protect our domestic oil industry. Yeah.
I mean, if our domestic oil industry was in danger of getting 100% wiped out, then absolutely I would. Because you want to keep that research, design, and knowledge here in the United States as much as possible.
Well, so you would say that it's worth it because then, I don't want to mince words too much here, but then you're kind of having the rest of your economy subsidize the oil industry at that point, right? Because if you want the oil industry, if you want to keep that here and healthy and thriving, and a lot of fracking companies I think did either shut down or are very on very hard times right now compared to where they were when we were spending $4 plus a gallon of gas. Now you're asking every other industry in your country to pay higher prices to effectively subsidize that industry when that money could be going elsewhere. It just seems like not a good deal.
I think it's absolutely a good deal, like on a strategic sense, yeah, because you don't want to lose that knowledge and all your trained engineers and the like that would be involved with the fracking industry.
You're losing a lot of other stuff as well, though. Like, let's say that we do that to protect our industry. All of those dollars now that are being used to subsidize that oil industry, those are dollars that aren't going towards other potential industries. So what if those industries start to undergo harm because of the opportunity cost? Because people are now spending their money on higher cost of goods at stores because truckers are going to have to spend more money on their oil and all of those margins decrease. All of the money going towards that is now lost from other industries as well. It almost sounds like the broken window fallacy a little.
No, I don't. I mean, I think it depends. Like, you don't want, right? So you don't want a situation where you're spending billions upon billions upon billions of dollars when there's actual costs to protect a industry that's completely non-competitive, right? So it's a spectrum. It's a scale. Like, for example, if I'm Hong Kong, I'm not going to spend billions of dollars to establish a domestic aluminum manufacturing industry because I have absolutely no reason to produce there. But that's not what we're talking about. And I don't think that's what the situation the United States is in. The situation the United States is in is where there are certain key strategic industries, steel, aluminum, it could be oil fracking or the like, which are in danger of being taken by other countries because they're uncompetitively and unfairly stealing these industries for us. And my point is, once they're gone, once you lose these industries, you lose a whole host of positive externalities in research and development and the like that you're not capturing. Like, the example I would give to you is, like, if you look at every major industrialized country, as they rose to become an industrial power, they did so through a protectionist regime. Whether it was the UK, whether it was Germany, whether it was the United States, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and now China today. They all rose to having an industrial lead through a protectionist regime. And then after they became a global leader, typically what they would do is, because the calculus changed, they'd start to move to free trade and they lost their leadership. A really, really good example of this is the UK in the 19th century. So the UK just developed its industrial base in the Industrial Revolution under a protectionist regime. Then they started to move towards a model of free trade, and the Germans, who were very protectionist at the time, were able to outcompete them and conquer them on the global market.
I always pick
so
the
I
most
think as the
horrible
United
time to
States, like, you
resub.
can't capture and save every industry. Like, that's absurd. But I do think you need protectionism for certain key industries to keep them where other countries are stealing them from you.
I mean, I guess, fuck, I don't feel like I can. The thing that I'm having the trouble bridging is just, and again, like, I fully admit that you have the education over here, so I just could be missing it. But I feel like you're not accounting for the opportunity cost at all. I feel like that's a non-factor in your thing. Like, let's say, for instance, so in your world, I would go to a car dealership, and a car that costs $30,000 now costs $40,000 because we've tariffed Mexico to keep our cars here. Then I would go to Best Buy, and the iPhone that I could buy for $600 now costs me $1,200 or $900 or something more. Like, all of these extra dollars that are going towards protecting our industry here, that extra money that I had that I could have spent on some other type of good, well, one, now a lot of the poorest in your country don't have access to those luxury goods anymore, so the standard of living for the entire country will necessarily fall, right? That's
totally
inarguable.
disagree. Totally disagree.
How does the standard of living not fall if the cost of all goods rises?
Okay, so one of the things you could do is with the money you're bringing in through tariffs, whether on cars or appliances or the like, you can use it to offset taxes.
But
so that was the model of the United States.
That's impossible.
So there's still a dead weight loss. I agree.
by your
Yeah, go ahead.
definition, that's not possible. Because you said before that the only way that those other countries are competing is to unfairly subsidize their industry. So if China is doing it by pumping money from their government into their industry to make it more competitive, that's not money that we can capture through more efficient means. That money would just be law. We're forfeiting that if we put up protectionist policies to do all of the manufacturing here. We can't take advantage of China subsidizing anything at that point.
So I mean, we're not going to take advantage of. I don't really get your argument. Hold on, I'm sorry, I don't get that argument.
Okay, so let's say that I want to make sandwiches for school, and I'm going to sell sandwiches for school. Let's say that I buy and there's classmates, and we're competing to have the best businesses, okay? And I've got a kid that I buy peanut butter from, okay? And I always buy peanut butter from this kid. And he sells me peanut butter at $10 a jar, okay? Let's say that and I'm a sandwich manufacturer, okay? All the kids buy sandwiches from me. I sell sandwiches to them. Let's say that another kid, he cheats. Instead of using money that he raises, his mom and dad are actually giving him money to subsidize his peanut butter business, and then he sells his peanut butter for cheaper than the other kid. Well, you would call that an unfair subsidization of his industry, and you would say that that's not cool. However, I get to sell peanut butter sandwiches at a lower cost, and everybody that buys from me is now effectively saving money. Maybe there are kids that couldn't buy my sandwiches. Now they can buy the sandwiches because the cost of goods is lower. And maybe there's a kid that starts to open up a shop selling apple turnovers, because now that kids were buying my sandwiches for $10 a pop, now they're only spending $8, and they've got an extra $2 to spend every lunch. And all of this is made possible because that one kid's parents are subsidizing his peanut butter. Like, it feels like if another person wants to subsidize an industry, there are other players in the market that can take advantage of that. No? I'm sorry, that's the argument I mean when I'm talking about they're subsidizing shit and we can take advantage of that subsidization.
I see what you're saying. So the consumers of peanut butter or whatever the good is being subsidized, they get lower costs, and so you gain there. But what you're not adding in your calculus is the people that would lose their jobs from the other guy's subsidization and all those job losses to that.
Sure, but like, economies are living, breathing things. People will lose their jobs, but they do. You retrain, your economy evolves and changes over time to adapt to the needs of your country, right?
Yeah. So one of the key things here is like the labor and whether or not labor can adjust to different jobs and the like. So a really, really important point to keep in mind is like that when China entered the WTO in around 2000 or 2001, the argument was like, yes, we'd lose a lot of American manufacturing jobs, but these people will just be able to roll over into other industries. And because of the consumer surplus, like we'll save on the cheaper goods. This is the argument you're making. Once these people get new jobs, it's going to be a win-win situation. But in actuality, what we've seen is that areas where they've lost jobs due to China, these areas are still economically stagnant. Like, people don't just roll over into new jobs or move into other jobs. People aren't widgets in a machine. People are not cogs. They have skills, and there's like a stickiness to the labor market. And so you can actually have deadweight loss from a free trade regime because the cheaper consumer goods is offset by people losing their jobs and the associated cost of people being unemployed, like doing heroin or being on welfare or the like.
I partially agree with that, and I partially disagree. I see both sides of that. So one, what you say in terms of stagnation of certain industries, that's absolutely true. This is where a lot of Trump support came from in the Rust Belt, in my opinion. Places like Michigan, West Virginia that lost their manufacturing jobs. People cannot instantly retrain. I agree with that. However, I think that like to continue to move forward in a positive direction, it seems like you've got two options. One is, let's be real, it doesn't seem like we really invested much in retraining these people. That didn't seem like a priority or something we ever spoke about or something that happened a lot, or at least I'm not aware that we invested a lot of time into that. So we could either try to do that, try to retrain them to continue to take advantage of global markets and to let Marxians function as frictionless as possible, right, in the ways that they would want to, which to me, because I like markets, I think that sounds like a good idea, right? Education, retrain money there. Or we could throw up big tariffs to try to protect an industry that was going extinct and then make every single person who participates in your economy pay higher prices to effectively subsidize that industry, and then maybe even choke off others that could exist if that money was being spent elsewhere. And the fact that today we have more like computer programmers and software designers and engineers than we've ever had. I think every Western country is getting a more and more educated population. It seems like the former is so much more effective to do than the latter, than trying to protect an economy that might just be, going out of style, or to protect an industry going out of style. Sorry, go ahead.
First of all, no, I think that was a really good way you framed the issue, right? Like, I think that captures the two sides pretty well. But let me argue against this whole idea of worker retraining. I think we would spend a lot of money on worker retraining. So I would disagree with you. And if you look at like every time we pass a free trade bill, there's always billions of dollars of like worker displacement assistant money going to retrain these people. But what the empirical studies have found is that it doesn't matter how much money you spend or how you target these programs. It's really, really difficult to retrain people. So you can have in a situation where you have a permanent decline in living standards in clusters of the country. Like if you look at the industrial Midwest, West Virginia, and the like, Ohio, Michigan, we've seen an actual real decrease in living standards that's not being offset through the lower goods. And to me, that suggests that what's going on here is that you can't simply retrain everybody into being computer programmers or the like. Like it doesn't work. I think that, like, the way you should view a factory or manufacturing center, like even if it's 100% automated, there's a lot of high value jobs associated with it. But more than that, it raises wages not only within the factory, but within the little towns surrounding it as well. So one of the reasons why you might want to try to protect some of these industries, which I disagree, I don't think they're naturally going extinct, right? Like steel manufacturing or aluminum manufacturing in the United States, or even like components for vehicles, they weren't naturally going extinct. That's total myth. It's not like these jobs were 100% automated. They were moved overseas, and they're still applying human labor in these jobs.
I mean, technically, most of those manufacturing jobs have been automated. I mean, that's a separate topic.
No, I totally disagree. I think that automation happens. Like, I'm not going to disagree with you on that. That's real. But I think a lot of this automation rhetoric is used to disguise when we see jobs move, like, to Mexico or to China or the like. When the factories move there, it's not like they're replacing them 100% with robots. Like, the reason why companies are outsourcing these jobs is because they want to have the lower labor costs. And they're using, like, that rhetoric of automation, I feel like, is used to justify a lot of job losses that don't need to happen.
Okay, I guess I would have to look into that again, because I feel like I could quickly pull up like 5+ like pretty reputable articles that point to really big loss in labor due to automation. Like even in China, like their workers are even losing out quite a bit to automated jobs. It seems to be like a really big I was under the impression that like something like 90% of jobs, like even if we were to bring back jobs from China over to the United States, most of those jobs that would be brought back would just be automated. And when I say most, I mean like 90% plus of those jobs that were brought back would be automated. And in fact, the only people that would have jobs if factories were opening up would be people like engineers that maintain and program the robots and work on that kind of stuff. It would never be like factory workers.
That just goes to that just goes to my argument that, like, what you just said, like if we brought those jobs back and say it's 100% automated, you still get a lot of high value jobs and engineers and like supporting the factory. Like that.
Well, but that's not your
real.
argument. Your argument was protecting lower jobs, because any engineer, this is a guess, but I'm guessing that any engineer that can work in a factory that is smart enough to program robots could probably get a comparable white collar job doing some other type of software dev or engineering work as well. Like these are people that these are probably highly retrainable people or highly malleable people that can move to other sectors, I imagine.
Yeah, sure, but those jobs might not be there, right? Like if you look at the global economy, there are countries that produce like commodities, there are countries that produce like low value add manufacturing, and then there are countries that produce high value add manufacturing. And it's not a mistake, or it's not like random that the market picked certain countries to do the high value add manufacturing. There were strategic actions and policies by their government to, first of all, capture that high value add manufacturing and to keep it there. And I think the United States needs to employ a similar industrial policy to make sure that as many of these high value add manufacturing jobs are kept in the United States, not only because they employ low skilled workers, but also because of the high skilled workers and the like. Like let me give you an example, Destiny. Like, it's not a mistake, right? It's not an accident that Germany has a comparative advantage in automobile manufacturing. That a lot of thousands of jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs in automobile manufacturing are in Germany. It didn't just happen like that. The German government was very strategic in the development of their auto manufacturing industry. And even today, they have a heavily protectionist regime to keep that auto manufacturing industry there. Or tech industry, if you look at like electronics. So Japan developed its electronic industry. It's not like the market just randomly picked Japan as a center for electronic manufacturing. No, the Japanese government actively intervened into the market to develop electronics manufacturing. They cultivated that, and now that it's there in Japan, they're doing as much as possible to keep that there. And now Japan is a global leader in electronics manufacturing, and the United States is not. We've lost those jobs, and they're never going to come back. And I would be more sympathetic with you with these arguments that like we can climb the value chain if we were seeing wages across the board move up, living standards going up, and like the economy was really dynamic and doing well. But in the United States, we've seen nothing but stagnation for people in the middle. And if you only have a high school degree and no college education, like your living standards have declined over the last 20 to 30 years.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with the stagnation of wages, but I mean, I have a hard time believing that if we kept factory jobs here and we increased the cost of all the goods, like that's when you're talking about like real wages and shit, right? You're factoring in like the cost of those things as well. So like, it's possible that they could be even worse off. And I have a hard time believing that employing a bunch of people in the Rust Belt in some manufacturing jobs somehow increases the cost of living for everybody across the U.S. that now has to pay a higher cost of goods to subsidize the existence of their jobs.
But it works. It works. Like, look at South Korea, Japan, or Taiwan. These are all areas where they're very protectionist regimes, and they have high living standards. And the middle class in these countries are doing well, and arguably they're doing better than the United States.
In Japan and South Korea, I don't know if that's true or not, so I can't really argue.
Like, I'm sure on a per capita basis, the United States probably skews higher. But, like, if you look at the median Japanese worker versus the median U.S. worker, or the median South Korean worker versus the median U.S. worker, they're probably doing better in terms of wages and income and living standards than the United States. And if you look at like the average high school worker, I'd say Japan compared to the average high school worker in the United States, I'd say they have a pretty good living standard. Like the U.S. has a lot of endowments, like capital and land and stuff. So the U.S., it might beat them on an aggregate number. But like, but the Japanese or the South Koreans or the Taiwanese, they're not impoverished, right? They're doing pretty well for themselves. Having a protectionist regime, sure, you have a higher cost consumer economy, but like you can survive that. You can do pretty well. Like another point to ask, like if a protectionist regime were so deleterious for the economy, why do all these countries pursue these policies? Whether it's East Asia, whether it's Europe, whether it's even Mexico, actually. Mexico is pretty protectionist relative to other low-income countries. Like, why are these policies so popular if they're so terrible for the economy?
Well, I'm not I'd have to go and look more. I wasn't under the impression before you told me that Germany is highly protectionist. I wouldn't think that would even be allowed. Like, they're part of the Eurozone. How are they allowed to practice such insanely protectionist policies while still having relatively open trade with the other countries in the Eurozone? I'm
because they're protectionist relative to the rest of the world. So what Germany does is they're on the euro, and they devalue the euro relative to a hypothetical Deutschmark by keeping in the southern European countries. Like, so during the whole euro crisis with Greece, Italy, and the like the reason why the Germans bailed these countries out is by having the southern European periphery on the euro. It pulls the weight of the euro down, and German exporters can do really well. Like, the German export sector has been booming over the last 20 years while they're on the euro, because the euro is cheaper than a hypothetical Deutschmark. Like, the Deutschmark would be overvalued relative to the euro. Like, the Germans are one of the most protectionist countries out there. Like, yes, okay, they're free trade relative to, say, France or Italy, but they're not really competing against, say, France, Italy, or Greece. They're competing against other high value add manufacturers like Japan, China, and the United States. And they have a very protectionist regime. The European Union is highly protectionist. It's just the way they hide their currency devaluing is through like Italy and Greece. Like,
so like when you I don't know if like, does currency devaluing, does that count as protectionism? Like, do they actually like subsidize their manufacturing? Do they actually pour money into their like government money is being used to subsidize the trade of automobiles or anything like that? Or
yeah, no, it's heavily like having a cheaper currency than what the market would suggest. That is definitely protectionist, because a cheaper currency boosts exports. It's like
and the entire EU agrees to devalue their currency just for the sake of the German auto manufacturing or whatever. Like,
yeah, so it's like a Faustian bargain. So the lower the southern European countries, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, they get cheaper borrowing rates because they know that the euro is implicitly backed by Greece, right? So they get cheaper borrowing rates and they can finance their fiscal budget. And in return, the Germans get a devaluation of the euro relative to what the Deutschmark would have been. and they can export, and they can do really well in the global markets. It's a highly protectionist regime. And the Germans subsidize technical training for factories and the like, so they're subsidizing education for their industry sector.
Gotcha. I mean, I would have to look up more, like, I guess in the trade-offs, but like essentially, like I don't know. I'd have to look up more into the trade-offs of this, because it sounds to me like if somebody wants to, again, like I go back to my former argument that if Germany wants to sit there and subsidize the fuck out of their manufacturing market, that should mean that we take advantage of the money that they pour into their subsidizations, whether it's through the devaluation of their currency or what, that we should be able to take advantage of that in the form of trade, and that if our economy can reallocate its resources into other ways, then we can just continue to capitalize on what we do best, the comparative advantage argument. Like, that's what it sounds like to me, but you're saying that the value of those jobs somehow being lost is really bad, even though we can't keep them.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, for most industries, like, on Facebook.com.
Hold on, wait, I'm sorry. Wait, can you hear me?
The capitalist economy. Yeah.
Okay, wait, hold on. Your thing just, can you start that sentence over again? The Skype cut out.
Okay, sorry. All I was going to say is, like, for most industries, they're heavily concentrated. Free trade works when you have a lot of small producers and a lot of small consumers. But the actual the capitalist economy is it tends towards monopolies, right? You have one Facebook, you have one Amazon.com, you have one Microsoft. You don't have like 1,000 small Microsofts all producing their operating systems. So for these industries which are heavily concentrated among one or a few producers, then the free trade model really starts to break down. And for a nation, and for a nation's economy, it makes sense to capture these corporations, as many of them as possible, and you capture them
to be a little bit more nuanced in that. Like, Microsoft isn't a single producer, I don't think, and I doubt that Microsoft is like a vertical monopoly where they manufacture all of their own goods and then assemble everything and then sell everything, like, from start to finish, right? Like, wouldn't Microsoft be outsourcing their manufacturing to other companies, or somebody like Intel or whatever? Intel might not, because I think they have their own fabrication plants, but like, because they probably buy like the components or whatever. Like, don't these people outsource to a ton of different other companies as well for manufacturing? Like, even if you have this one large quote-unquote monopolistic country or company, it's still getting its components from a multitude of other companies as well. It's not just like one company all the way through.
No, that's absolutely right. Like, I don't disagree with you there. But what I'm saying is, like, the reason why the U.S. is a tech leader is because we have a lot of these key tech companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, and the like. Like, we've been able... Like, there's not going to be multiple Microsofts. There's going to be one or two Microsofts. And if you're a country and you're competing against other countries, if that company develops within your borders, you want to do as much as possible to keep them there, right? And you want to do carrots through research and development, and also sticks through tariffs. And so for, like, steel, there's not going to be 1,000 steel industries.
So
there's going to be a few.
I understand what you're saying, but like, let's say that we have a company like Apple that's trying to develop, but what if Apple never sells the first iPod or the first iPhone because it can't afford to do so? Say that they want to sell the first iPhone, but because we've got protectionist policies in place, everything costs $1,500, and now that company just never exists, and instead that company starts up in China where it has access to cheaper goods in order to sell a product like that.
Wait. So you're saying...
Let's say that a large company like Microsoft or Apple is trying to start itself in America, but they just never exist because they can't get off the ground because the cost of goods is so high that it's too big a barrier to entry. Consumers are never going to spend $5,000 on a computer that's all manufactured in the U.S. So now these companies start in other countries across the world because doing so in America makes no sense because our manufacturing is too expensive.
So if under that hypothetical scenario where you've got like a high cost good in the economy, right, the workers would have higher wages, and so it'd be able to offset that, and there's a demand for computers, and they would be able to buy those computers.
I don't know if I agree with that. Just because some plants are opening that manufacture things in the United States, that doesn't boost the wages of every other worker in the country.
Yeah, no, totally. So there's been I disagree with you. So there's been a lot of research on the like wage effects, right? Like, if you have a factory in a town, jobs such as like waitresses and like random service jobs or bartenders and the like, their wages are higher because it's a much more competitive labor pool.
Yeah, but not everybody. Like, I live in Omaha, Nebraska. There are no plants
Yeah.
there, right? Or maybe somebody that lives in, I don't know, like Houston or Austin. I don't know if they've got like manufacturing plants there. Like, these are people whose wages aren't going to rise because plants open up in Michigan, or people on the coast, you know, on the West Coast. Like, nobody in Washington is all of a sudden getting a pay bump because in West Virginia a new manufacturing plant, you know, opened up, but they're still buying those same goods. Yeah, I was going to say, like, the real life example I can think of is when Argentina tried to in-house their own BlackBerry, when they put up massive trade barriers to everybody else because they wanted to make their own cell phones. And it went really good for like 2 years, and then it horribly fucking failed, and then everybody left because they just couldn't do it with closing their trade to everybody.
Yeah, so I mean, like, look, that's fair. Like, you don't want to completely isolate your economy from the global market, and I don't think you want to try to protect industries which you'll never have a prayer in a million years of developing. So, like, if Botswana, for example, put up tariffs to try to develop, say, a domestic steel industry, and I don't think Botswana has a lot of coal or iron ore, it's never going to work, right? It's going to be an absolute disaster. So you have to be somewhat strategic, but I just don't think that like the 100% open model, or even like the 90% open model, works that well. You want to be somewhere right there in the middle, like this nice sweet spot where you're trying to develop key industries and keep those industries in the United States as much as possible, or whatever country you are. Like, again, why have so many countries throughout history that have industrialized pursued a protectionist regime? And the reason being is it's not like a perfect model of 1,000 small suppliers and 1,000 small consumers, right? They know that there's only going to be so many Sonys in the world, and if you're a country, you want to do whatever you can to develop that Sony there and try to keep it there.
Gotcha, I guess. But I mean, like, there are a lot of like open markets as well. The United States it seems like relatively open, and I mean, we are the largest and most successful, arguably, in some metrics, I guess, economy that exists right now. I don't know. I guess it's just like if we look at like a single market, like I can't stomach the oil thing, like boosting that, or we could look at, say, like car manufacturing. Trump was talking about putting a 20% tariff on all parts coming from Mexico. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I just can't imagine.
100% with that.
Like, I guess that maybe you open up some manufacturing plants, maybe in the United States. Most of those jobs are probably going to be automated, but now every single person in the country gets fucked, because now everybody, that Focus RS that I just bought for 40 grand, now that's going to cost me almost 50 grand. Or maybe and now everybody because cars are oftentimes a regressive good, right? Because lower, like, poorer people spend a higher percentage of their income on a car than a wealthier person would. Now somebody that was going to buy a new car, maybe they don't buy that new car anymore because it's 20% more expensive. Maybe now they buy, maybe they don't buy a new car, they buy a used car. So now you've got dealerships that move less product. Now it seems like other people's jobs are affected as well. It just seems really hard to me. Like, I guess, like, and I'm coming at this from a very, very, very Econ 101 point of view. I understand that, but it just seems like when you try to fuck with a market, like really hardcore, when you bump that tariff up, it seems like there's a lot of friction that is going to have to sort itself out with a lot of consumers that either don't buy new goods or put off sales. And then as a result of that, you've got a lot of dealerships and manufacturers that don't move as much product, so they have to lay some people off. Like, it seems really hard for me to believe that just opening a factory somewhere all of a sudden, shores up all of those other costs in your economy now that everybody's trying to subsidize an industry that would be more cheaper elsewhere, I guess.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't think it's going to go from like $30,000 to $40,000. I think that's overstated. And part of the rise in the labor costs from, say, moving that factory to the United States is just going to come out of corporate profits. And corporate profits have been doing very, very well. Like, so I'm not worried about like GM or Ford taking a hit on their profits if the workers can do a little bit better.
Wait,
right?
Our car companies were like barely solvent. Like, I mean, we lost like two of our major.
Yeah.
How can you say that they have these massive profits that they'll just happily like give up? Like, we just barely kept our car companies through the crisis and everything.
In 2008, but they've done pretty well since then. Like, corporate profits for like U.S. corporations as a whole, on a generalized sense, are doing reasonably well. Like, there's not a problem where the U.S. economy is facing a shortage of corporate profits. The economy is currently skewed too much towards corporate profits relative to wages and relative to like where workers are.
I guess like if I feel like, and again, dude, my arguments are so Econ 101. So these are like really simple for you. Like I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but it's just like I have a really hard time buying that. That sounds like the liberal argument to me that I hear liberals make all the time. It's like, oh well, they'll just take it out of their massive profits. Like if these guys were posting such massive profits that they could just do a price cut or whatever, why wouldn't they already to be more competitive? Like it seems really hard for me to believe that a major company is okay with just eating, you know, a 20% increase in cost is going to be what 50-80% out of their margins or maybe more. Like it seems really hard to believe that the company would just eat that and be totally okay with it. Like those costs are usually passed on to the consumer. No,
not always. It depends on the elasticity of demand. So say your labor costs went up, like to make a widget.
I understand the concept, but elasticity of demand for a new car is not very high. That's a very elastic good because you can buy a used car. Oftentimes you can put off buying a new car. Luxury cars, the demand for any car over 30,000 is incredibly elastic. Maybe the demand for a car period is inelastic, but there's the used car market. There's cheaper cars. Maybe you buy the Focus, the lower one instead of the RS. Maybe you buy the cheaper Volkswagen instead of the more expensive one. Like the demand for a very nice car, a more expensive car, I would argue is very elastic.
I would just argue that the labor cost in a car is such a small component of the overall vehicle cost because you've got R&D, you've got the raw materials, you've got like capital for the plants and the like, and for marketing and that.
It can't be.
Labor cost is so small. You're not going to see, if you build that factory in the U.S. instead of in Mexico, you're not going to see costs skyrocket $10,000 on a vehicle. I totally disagree with you there.
How can the cost of labor be so small, but it's worthwhile to move these plants sometimes thousands and thousands of miles away? The labor cost must be pretty significant if it's worth it to do that. No.
I mean, in terms of the overall car, or versus like for the corporate perspective, like for the company's
overall
perspective.
What I'm saying is, like, let's say that if it cost me, so my car, let's say that it cost me $5,000 in labor in the U.S. to make my car. Let's say that it cost only $4,500 in Mexico to make my car. I don't know. I don't think I could ship my car from Mexico to the U.S. for $500. Or, well, maybe, but using different numbers. But so the cost of labor must be somewhat significant if they move shop to a whole different country and then deal with all the shipping and everything. Like, I imagine that it must be more than just a little bit, no?
No, so it could be small on an individual car basis, but large over the quantity of cars because these people are manufacturing lots and lots of cars. So that's where I would disagree with you. So like the labor cost could be like less than 10% of a vehicle. And it's not that, it doesn't make that much difference to consumer because you're only buying one car, but from a company that manufactures like millions of cars, and that's how the cost savings could be achieved.
Yeah, but you have to also be a little bit careful because when you say labor cost is 10% of a vehicle, that could be 90% of your margin, right? Let's say that I sell a cheeseburger for $8, or I'm sorry, let's say I sell a cheeseburger for, you understand this, maybe just for chat. If I sell a cheeseburger for $10, okay, and let's say I sell it for $10, okay, and it costs me $8 to make it, right? I have a $2 margin. Let's say that my labor is $2. If I increase my labor by $1 there, which would only be 1 out of 8, whatever that percentage is, 13% or whatever, right? That 13% increase in my cost of labor there eats 50% of my margin. That's huge. So a 10% increase, I don't know what the exact margins on the automobile industry looked like, but a 10% increase in the cost of labor, that could be a massive percentage of your margins, of your profit.
Yeah, potentially. But I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I mean, I just Googled something that says that the labor cost of a vehicle is around 10 to 15%. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you increase that 10 to 15% by like 3 or 4 percentage points, it doesn't necessarily mean that it suddenly becomes non-profitable to make a car or unprofitable to make a car.
Well, maybe, but I don't know what the margins look
like. Let's just back up for a second, right? Uh-huh. Because you've got two basic models for your economy. One is where the U.S. was from 1945 to 1965, where you had like a relatively protectionist regime. It was a high value add manufacturing economy, and wages did really well. The middle class did really well in the United States
in mind
as
that,
a whole.
In this time period, also like everybody else's countries were on fire.
True, totally agree.
A little bit of a different world economy, but okay.
That's very fair. But you still had like Western Europe was growing fairly well. Canada was doing well, but you're right. Like you're right. You move it to the United States of like post 2000 or post 1995, where you had two big free trade shocks, not only NAFTA but China entering the WTO, and like look at what's happening to our political system. Like the political system is coming destabilized. You have the rise of like Antifa and the alt-right. Because wages have been stagnant. Like this is ultimately an economic effect of what's going on. The political system is becoming actively destabilized because we've hollowed out the middle class. And so, from my point of view, if you move to a moderately more protectionist regime, you're going to really bring back manufacturing. At the market,
okay,
not
but like
dramatically,
we had the
and you're gonna
KKK in like the
stabilize
50s. We had like the KKK in the 50s and stuff. Like I don't know if like we're just now getting people like doing some riots and marches because of only economic conditions. It sounds a little loosely connected to me.
Yeah, we've always had like the KKK and all these guys at the margins, but they're growing in political force and influence. Like would you say the United States is more politically stable now, or as it was in say 1965? Like I'd say the U.S. was far more stable in 1965 than it is now.
I mean, I guess it depends on what you mean by political stability. Like that's just one way to measure the system. There's like, this is a really, really complicated, this is like an intersection of like a million different factors. I don't know if I would just point to the economy as being one thing. I think that economics is partially why Trump won. I think that there are disenfranchised ex-manufacturing workers and whatnot, maybe some blue dog Democrats, I'm not sure, but like people that feel pretty burned. I think you can talk a lot about Brexit for this too, right? People that feel burned by kind of world trade related issues. Like I definitely think that exists, but I don't know if I would say that that's like the sole or even like a plurality of the influence in regards to our current political system.
Sure, it's a factor. It's a major factor. Like we could disagree on like what share is it, but like I think we could both agree that it's a major factor. And it's like to me, it doesn't make like democracy becomes less stable as your middle class declines. In the United States, the big problem we're facing as we go into the 21st century is that our middle class has weakened. And to me, one of the ways we can stabilize the middle class, we can't save it, I'm not promising a cure-all, is through protectionist policies that keep key industries here in the United States. Like from your perspective, Destiny, like as a moderate liberal and like a small L liberal, I don't mean like you're a left wing liberal. I'm just in the very broad sense, right?
I prefer to think of myself as a classical liberal. No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but like whatever you, as a moderate type of guy, like you have to look at the direction the United States is going, and you have to ask yourself, moving to a free trade regime, like has it made things worse in the United States or has it made things better? And I just think the balance of the evidence, I mean, yes, sure, we've gone some cheaper goods. And so on that sense, it's helped. But there's been a very serious cost to it. And the serious cost has been the deindustrialization of the entire Midwest of the United States. And these people being left behind. And they're turning to heroin. And we've seen the labor force participation drop off significantly. We've seen the amount of drug users and the like increase. We've seen the amount of people on like food stamps, welfare, disability, well, particularly disability and food stamp, has dramatically skyrocketed. So it's not like that these policies have in the net helped the United States. There's a really big cost. And I think like when you do the calculation, I think that the costs of moving towards this open market regime has more than outweighed the benefits from cheaper goods.
Yeah, I guess it seems like we would have to start like hashing out like specific numbers in terms of like labor force participation rate falling. Isn't that kind of a result of the baby boomers? Like I brought up a labor force participation rate. That sounds like something that would be very closely tied to age. So like I see that it started to rise dramatically in the 70s and 80s, and it peaked like early 2000s. As all of those baby boomers enter retirement, wouldn't we expect to see more and more old people that aren't part of the labor force anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. No, that's part of it, but that's not all of it. Like there was recently a study that came out where it's like 20% of the decline in labor force participation was attributed to opioid addiction. So yeah,
I only bring that up because our labor force participation is still significantly higher than in the 40s, 50s, and 60s when you said we were practicing protectionist policies and we were booming for manufacturing in our own country. I guess like go ahead.
Yeah, it's much lower than when China joined the WTO in 2000, 2001. Like it's dropped.
Well, yeah,
like
but 2001 is when all the baby boomers are still working, right? They're in their 50s, like they're still part of the labor force, right?
Yeah, fair enough. But it started to like they didn't start retiring en masse. I'd say until like 2010-ish.
Yeah, which is when you start to see like the big fall offs of labor participation, right? Around.
But it started before that. It actually started before that.
Gotcha. It just seems like it's still, our labor force participation is still quite a bit higher than it was in the 50s and 60s.
We can pull up the chart. Like that's a really good. I mean, part of that might be women entering into the market.
Sure, possibly, yeah.
Right. So women entering the workforce would raise your labor force participation rate. Actually, so yeah, it looks like it goes up throughout the 70s,
Listen to
80s,
him. He
90s,
is right.
and then it
Me
really
and all
starts
of my-
declining around 2000, 2001. Looks like to be a huge inflection point.
The I guess to really hammer out and again, this is where like it would help to know. I can only speak in generalities and like basic econ theory. It would help to know like specifics. Like we both acknowledge that there are benefits and drawbacks to open trade, and we both acknowledge that there are benefits and drawbacks to protectionist policies. But we disagree about the exact percentages in terms of harm or benefit on both sides of these issues. And so I think that's where we'll continue to disagree on, because you believe that protectionist policies, you think that the good there outweighs the bad, and I don't believe that personally. And then you think that as time has gone on, the free trade policies that we have right now, you think that the bad has outweighed the good, and I don't necessarily agree on that. So I think that's where like our disagreements kind of stem from.
Yeah, I would totally agree. My point that I would add is that like when you do the simple cost benefit analysis of free trade, and you're looking at it from a corporate perspective, where you look at like input costs and arbitrage and all of that, there are a lot of externalities which really are not factored into that. And once you start to incorporate these externalities into the argument, I think it skews the weight on the side of free trade not being advantageous for the U.S. in our particular circumstances. And the big two I would add is first the negative externalities from people losing their jobs and not being able to find new employment at a sudden shock, which we've seen, right? And those negative externalities include drug addiction, addiction, or like being dependent upon the state, destabilizing families, destabilizing communities, and the like. That's one. And then a positive externality that you're not including, it would be when you have a factory located within a country, that factory creates jobs in terms of research and development, in terms of like the high value add jobs, and it creates like an entire product chain and universe associated with it. So once you lose that factory or that industry, the entire industry, you don't get that back, and you lose those positive externalities, which a corporation doesn't see them necessarily, but the country or the society would.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I agree with that for sure. But then on the flip side, by having factories in the United States, every single person is paying a higher cost of good. Not necessarily every person is being paid more because they're not located close enough to those factories to take advantage of a more competitive labor market. And effectively, other people or other companies that might exist based on the extra money being raised or being saved by people spending less on these goods, now those companies either have to close shop or move elsewhere as a result. So I guess it's just a balancing of those two things. Right.
Yeah, and I would argue like part of the problem is like if you put a targeted tariff on like one industry in particular, like you said, it raises the cost to consumers. So what you want to move to is a regime where you have a flat tariff rate across good, and particularly on manufactured or value add products, as a way of protecting across the value chain so that no one industry has that huge advantage or disadvantage. So like that's China. That's China's model. China's model is they have flat tariffs across the entire value chain, and it's via import VAT, value add tax, VAT. And that's how China was able to develop. That's Japan. That's Korea. That's Taiwan. And so Trump is slowly taking us to that model. And I think on the net, it's a beneficial thing. And I think if you look at every major industrialized country, you can't find me one that is industrialized and has a free trade regime and was able to stay industrialized. Usually they'll lose that industrial edge.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I guess I mean, I understand your point for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. That's it. I think you should vote Trump in 2020. And
well, wait, that's a whole other discussion. Do you really think that Trump is moving us, and do you think that Trump is intelligent enough that this is what he tries to do with his policies, or?
I don't know if he came on it by accident or by intention, but I definitely think he's moving us that way, and I think it's an extraordinary important breakthrough, because I think you have a complete dominance by neoliberals in both the Republican and Democratic parties that have prevented this and have been able to gain advantages over moving towards this deindustrialization framework. And Trump's instincts, I don't know if he's actually thought through the trade theory, but his instincts are the good instincts. And I think he's doing a great help to the country. Like we're renegotiating NAFTA. That's huge. That's really, really important. We're looking at putting up tariffs on aluminum and steel production from China. Like these are all huge developments in a positive direction from my point of view.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I appreciate the conversation, my dude.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, have a good one.
Okay, bye.
Oof. All right, option select. Can you come in here and tell me how much you think I got right or wrong? I'm curious. I have like an okay understanding of like really basic economic principle, but that's all I have. I don't have like, I can't cite specific countries. I know like a few stories. I know that Argentina tried to do a phone thing and failed fucking massively. And I know that I know how things like interact on a very basic level, but everything he said about the EU and Asia was wrong. Was it really though? X Skills me said I'm mostly right. Fuck. So we probably fucked a lot up. I'm just kidding. I love you, buddy. Yeah, this is an area, when you're talking about softer sciences like economics, I think that the knowledge of history is so much more important than just knowing the basic theory. And my actual background in econ, like history, is non-existent, so... Is Blaire White not happening? I don't know what happened to her or what's going on. I have no idea. I like how in these arguments either something is true or its exact opposite is true, and there are good arguments for both. Well, the problem with economics is that in reality, everything for economics becomes very, very, very complicated. Like, this is why it's a soft science, right? It's because there are millions of fucking variables, right? It's not like physics or chemistry or something. Right? It's just everything is so complicated that it's hard to tell how things play out in reality. This is why I say the history argument is very, very, very important, because you can theorize all day. Well, what happens if this happens? What happens if this happens? You can make theories and whatnot and talk about it, but like having actual concrete examples to point to is really important as well, because there's a million different things that can happen in any economy that maybe your basic theory doesn't take into account, you know? No, Sierra, if you want to, yeah, my Destiny G chat, sure, I'd love to talk to that dude. You have to join a chat channel option select for me to drag you in. Destiny doesn't understand the implications of the capital account surplus and how it benefits our economy. I don't know what that means. When you say capital account surplus, are you talking about like trade deficits? Like if China owns a lot more USD versus us owning yen or whatever, that China brings the USD back to our country and invests into other projects here as a way of bringing the dollars back. So if the capital account is unbalanced or whatever, they bring the money back. Is that the kind of stuff you're talking about? Or ban the guy putting phishing links in your Twitch chat. What links? ImigBB, that one? I banned him. I don't know what it is. I don't know if that was the guy or not. What's up, my dude? Hey, can you hear me? Hello? Oh, Juan.
Hey.
Ian. Oh, hey, how's it going, buddy?
So, okay, I think I'm not the most qualified guy to talk on trade and macroeconomics. But let's go over like the basic things in regards to dejected workforce in the US. So, because that was his main argument at welfare laws, right?
Wait, could you say that again?
So, what he was telling us the whole time is, okay, it's nice to get cheap goods from China, but you're losing jobs in manufacturing and you're losing some kind of positive externality from
let me summarize his
those
point.
jobs.
So what he was saying was that even though it might cost us more dollars to have a manufacturing plant here in the United States, that when we ship that manufacturing plant away, the positive externalities of that plant are also lost. And if we could account for all of those positive externalities in a dollar sense, we would actually be losing value shipping those plants to another country, is essentially what he was saying.
Yeah, but I can't see how this should be true in any.
So the only ways that I can
exporting now. No, just hang on.
Okay.
I'm trying to. So, for example, German firms heavily export their knowledge around capital goods and manufacturing to China. German companies are very well known for industrial manufacturing, their knowledge around it. And so they go over to China and sell that knowledge. Yeah. And you don't automatically lose that knowledge don't lose that industry. So,
well, I think his argument would be that if they go and they sell that knowledge to China, that Chinese people would start doing the R&D over there instead of in Germany.
Yeah, and they can try and do that. And if it's as good as what Germans do, then Germans can move on to other sectors. I mean, but I don't see how you automatically losing all the know-how just because a plant closes in a certain area. What you're losing the production capability. But it's not necessarily the case that you're losing all of the workforce and losing all the know-how and losing R&D, and you're not creating complementary jobs to the work that is now being done in China.
What does Germany practice have a lot of heavy protectionist practice around their manufacturing industry? Do you know?
So I'm.
Oh shit! I'm sorry. Hold on. I have a phone call real quick. Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. Hello.
Hello. This is Nebraska Furniture Mart calling with a message about your recent delivery.
All right. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. So, to the best of my knowledge, it's we don't have any tariffs outside of what is going on in terms of what the EU does in terms of. So, I think there's EU-wide protectionism on agricultural goods, and of course are restrictions on what you can sell on the open market in the EU in terms of standards. So you can see those as implicit protectionist policies that prohibit other countries from participating.
But you would argue that you don't actually directly subsidize your like manufacturing industry, but to artificially lower the cost of goods to make other countries non-competitive.
No, some of that is going on. You certainly have the possibility as a regional government in Germany to subsidize the opening of a plant. So, for example, a case I'm familiar with, which kind of exemplifies how his argument can go horribly wrong, is the solar industry in Germany, which was heavily subsidized because Germany wanted to make the so-called Energiewandel, so the change in power supply. We were heavily subsidizing the German solar industry. But all of the subsidized plants just lost out to mostly Chinese manufacturers who could do it cheaper because labor is so costly in Germany and because there was no competitive advantage to be had.
Gotcha.
So kind of we were beaten out in the protectionist game, if you will.
Sure.
But I wouldn't say that it's across the board. Yeah.
So here's a question. If you are an exporter, you want a weaker currency, right? In general? Yeah. Why wouldn't anybody... Okay, because I really don't understand this, okay? Let's say I'm the head of the ECB, okay? And I'm going to give every single person in Europe $10,000 just because I want to do that. So I give everybody $10,000. All of them have more currency. The currency becomes weaker. We export more. What's the downside to doing that?
Yeah, so the main thing that was going on, which kind of was the downside to this. So in the EU system, you have kind of internal system of account to control the money supply between all the regional federal banks. Okay. Which is called the so-called target system, and basically. Regional state banks, like the Bank of Greece, can run up kind of credit accounts in terms of euro currency, just start printing money for themselves, even though that's not representative of their economic prowess, if you will. It's not backed up by any current or future production. Okay. And so then that has to be kind of internally negotiated how if Greece runs out with that money, buys shit all over the world in terms of euro value, how basically then Germans have to pay for it because we are producing the value that backs up the euro in the end. Germans and French.
Gotcha. Huh.
Okay. So internally, of course, it's nice to be exporting, but all of the weaker countries are kind of benefiting from, in their terms, the stronger currency they can now use to
import goods.
Exactly.
Huh.
So there's kind of no clear way around the necessity for goods to be backing up your.
Yeah, sure. I imagine you can make strong arguments for both ends of whatever you do with a currency.
But I want to address the point he was making about the manufacturing. I mean, it's a kind of completely out verse argument. You plop down a factory somewhere in an industry that hasn't naturally grown in your country, and then you're expecting that all of this ancillary all these ancillary jobs pop up around the factory, and you kind of have a boom, and you kind of need to nurture it to get it going. But there has to be demand for it, and you can't necessarily sustain it. Okay, if the only thing that's backing up the demand is that you're pressing down the price all the time.
Wait, can you explain that again?
So, for example, let's think about the example in human history, the Chinese Great Leap Forward.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with it in name. I don't remember exactly what happened, but
so in basic terms, it was Mao's plan to be leading in steel production in China. Numbers of steel production, okay?
Okay.
And he believed that if communist China was leading in steel production, then this would lead to not only glory for communist China, but also an economic leap forward.
Okay.
Okay. So the following thing happened to satisfy the goals in terms of steel production. Mao ordered every little town in China to kind of build a furnace and to start melting whatever ore or tools they had around, so that the production could be met. I mean, it's completely self-defeating economic activity, because nothing organic is happening here in terms of a demand that has to be satisfied. Okay, and that's basically the same thing that the guy you just had on was suggesting. You force an industry into existence and hope that people run with it, but you have to have market forces that kind of drive that demand.
Well, to defend his argument, the market forces exist. It's just that you would raise the cost of the goods, right? And then hope that the market can bear it. Or I guess the demand would fall to some extent because of the elasticity of the good. But the market forces exist. You're not trying to spur an industry from non-existence into existence. You're just taking an industry and making the cost a little bit higher, right?
Yeah, and then it's just a matter of degrees, right? You would need to know demand elasticities and what welfare effects you're causing. But I mean, in the case of for example, the German solar industry, it definitely didn't work out because first China was producing solar panels a lot more cheaply, and the only thing backing up the market were massive federal subsidies that in the end turned out to be wasted, right? So just building a factory somewhere and then hoping for the best is not I mean,
I understand. I'm sorry. So let me contextualize what you're saying, right, in terms of that guy's argument. So the way that you would contextualize this into his arguments is you would say, let's say that we'll say just iPhones. Let's say that we move the iPhone manufacturing plants over here. We know that there is a demand for iPhones at their current cost, but we don't know if the market will bear that a higher cost for that. That you can maybe invest a ton of money into those plants. The iPhones never sell because they become more expensive, and then eventually all of the investment is wasted. Is like what would be your example, right? Your analogy.
Basically. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But you just don't know those numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, you. I mean, it's then the state investing, okay, on behalf of individuals in the economy, right? Saying it knows better what's going to be happening economically in the next 10, 20 years, yeah. And normally we let investors bear that risk, yeah. Have those people fail, hopefully, if markets are working correctly. And in that case, in kind of perverse idea of how to keep jobs and to start economic activity, the state just starts investing and hopes for the best. And it does, so it doesn't need to turn out correctly at all. And just saying, yeah, we need aluminium industry, we need steel industry.
We call it aluminum here.
Oh, I'm sorry, buddy.
Go ahead.
So aluminum.
Yeah, there you go.
Just because you're thinking that's going to be the driver of ancillary industries, you're not necessarily right.
Yeah, and my biggest problem with that statement was that if it was the driver of ancillary industries, I feel like the market would have found ways to shift that around to make it work. That's how I felt. Like let's say that a factory can exist and save a whole town. That like if that's something that would have that losing that would actually be a detriment, I feel like that market would have found a way to keep that there. That's what I would feel. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Well, here's like
so.
Or go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. No.
Well, here's like a general thought that I have, and you can tell me if I'm totally off on this, but I feel very strongly about this, so maybe I might be extra dumb. I feel like any argument that you make on behalf of jobs is always a stupid argument. I feel like that should almost be a non-factor. That like anytime you say like we should do this or this or this for jobs, I feel like jobs should always be a result of like economic policy and never like a goal. Like that always seemed like a really dumb argument to me. So for example, let's say that we want to start some new industry and the argument, well, if we do this, it'll create 50,000 jobs. That always seems like that if jobs exist, they should be a result of other market forces, not just because they're created by some arbitrary budget. Do you think that's a fair statement to say most of the time, or do you think that's kind of naive or short-sighted?
I don't know. I would take it on a
case-by-case basis.
Case-by-case basis, because you could have for example, you know the Laffer curve, right?
Yeah. That's there are ideal levels of taxation, the theoretical. Right.
For example, imagine a situation where we're kind of on the right side of the Laffer curve, right? Then we would have an economically beneficial effect and would create jobs from lowering taxation, for example.
But then that would be more like your goal isn't necessarily to create jobs. Your goal is to increase the size of the economy, or even to increase tax receipts by lowering taxes, right? Your goal isn't necessarily to create jobs. That's just what would happen as a result. I guess it kind of sounds like I'm mincing words.
Yeah, but you could sell it that way. I mean, it's a weird way to. I mean, it's what politicians always say. It will create jobs. This will create jobs. We will create jobs.
I guess I just don't like that because it feels like that.
It's not a helpful way to frame the issue.
Yeah, to frame it and sell it to normies. But I feel like when I listen to people use that jobs argument, it seems like you can use that for a lot of bad arguments, right? If you've got an industry that's unviable, you could, well, if we get rid of that industry, we'll lose jobs. Like, okay, well, that's not a good argument, like, to protect an industry just because we'll lose jobs, Or like you could make an argument for literally anything, we could employ, 100 million people that go around and hug trees and we pay them $10,000, a year to do that. And now you want to cut the tree hugging program. Okay, well, look how many jobs we're going to lose if you cut that. Like, it always seems like when I hear people bring up jobs, it's like, okay, well, I feel like that shouldn't be the topic, right? Like if the industry is unviable or if it's not profitable or something like that, it seems like jobs are always just kind of brought up and thrown around when they should be a result, not a goal.
Yeah, but so one thing in the entire spiel of that guy, who I would still want to see the credentials from,
Okay.
but okay. what he's correct. You can't just shift people to new jobs very easily.
Sure, I agree with that. So let me I didn't speak on both halves of this. So I do agree that it's probably very difficult, maybe even impossible, to retrain people. I don't know if I would go that far. But the economy as a whole has been not retrained, but as people die and people are born, we've had a greater shift towards higher educated jobs. Would you agree with that? Like that more and more people in the West are being educated than ever before, right? That levels of higher education are becoming more and more necessary to compete in today's economy, and it's resulting. Whereas if we were to keep factories around, if we jump forward 50 years in a society where we've protected factories, less people will be educated than if we would have gotten rid of all of them, right? You agree with that?
So it's a basic argument of kind of taking your lumps now so you can be better off in the future.
Yeah.
And that's it's always painful but necessary to have these adjustments in the labor market. And we can think of kind of policies how to deal with the people that are being left behind, but I don't think it's a sensible policy to kind of erect amusement parks where they can play their own old jobs, for their amusement, while the economy is moving on to different things.
So what is the solution then to things like these? Because I don't like the idea of the entire market bearing the brunt of dinosaurs. It's just really rude to say that, but like, you know what I mean? Like, there is these industries, everybody knows it needs to go, everybody knows we need to move on and modernize, but because these people can't retrain jobs, the entire market has to bear that cost. That seems kind of like a bad thing to me.
So generally, if something some industries like that are unprofitable, and if they aren't sustained by the government, they die off. Okay, the people don't die off.
No, they vote for Trump.
They vote for Trump, and Trump says, "Okay, I'm getting your jobs back," and then he's not getting their jobs back.
Yeah,
and then it's over. No, but seriously. Excuse me in the chat was having an argument about how retraining is working, and he see it as a very valuable thing. But in Germany, it does have some success. It's also a very heavily subsidized industry in Germany to have people retrained.
Sure.
But
I think that's a good subsidization. So like I like that type of subsidy because I think that you can tax the people that relocate the factories to pay for that. Right, I think that could be factored into the cost. So let's say that you're a company and you produce cars and you've got 2 factories in the United States. Well, let's say you want to move them to Mexico. That's fine, but the penalty for moving them to Mexico is a slight tax on every product that you bring over. And then the money from those taxes could go towards retraining. I think that those kinds of targeted subsidies I think are really cool. Or I would like that idea if it would work in practice, I guess.
I mean, you have to look at how the potential of these people in the Rust Belt is, and if that investment would be valuable. I mean, many of these people are probably unlikely to move. Obviously, they're still there without jobs, right?
So what do you think is like the solution or whatever?
So I don't have a concrete one, to be honest. I would need to take a look at what kind of so-called active labor market policies. I think in many cases they're not so helpful because of course they subsidize someone's further education decision without actually knowing whether that's going to be very helpful in the future. I mean, if you're doing some retraining, okay, let's say it takes like 1 or 2 years,
Mhm.
but you're already 50.
Yeah, I can't say like a 50-year-old manufacturer that's been working in a plant for 30 years retraining to anything equivalent.
And that's kind of the problem, and that's why it's especially problematic in the U.S. case. I think I don't know the. I got to pull up that one. Do you know who Angus Deaton is?
Nope.
Oh, he's a Nobel laureate in economics, and he did a recent study on the so-called deaths of despair. And the study focused around kind of was also kind of riding on the Trump voting phenomenon, where they examined how blue-collar workers were, for the first time in modern economic history, exhibiting white workers were exhibiting higher death rates by, for example, suicide.
Where blue-collar workers had higher rates of suicide?
Had higher death rates
My dude.
than
white-collar
the previous
workers?
generation.
Oh, okay.
Than
Sometimes
the previous generation.
Sometimes when you talk, your mic cuts off. I don't know if you're using push to talk or voice activation.
I'm gonna hold up, buddy.
Okay.
So how's this?
I don't know. I'll let you know if you cut off again.
Okay, fuck. Oh, buddy.
No problem.
All right. It was kind of showing that phenomenon of these people obviously feeling dejected and killing themselves, obviously, because they have lost their income and are unwilling to kind of start another life. And you can understand that. And if someone comes along, imagine the scenario, kind of some bureaucrat comes along and tells them, okay, dude, now you got to move state, come to Omaha and work for the streamer guy, organize his schedule and get him into podcasts. And we're going to retrain you for that. Okay, so you can be a social media manager or whatever else. Yeah. It's probably not gonna happen. Okay.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, so that's like a really tough.
And so in Germany, landscape is kind of a little bit different because here everybody is old, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so you don't have a choice but maybe take that older guy. But if you have many cool immigrants coming in, maybe give them a shot, right? As an employer.
All right, well, what do you do then, man? What's the solution? Do we just kill them all?
Euthanize, yes.
Euthanasia? You'd probably move them into camps of some sort, labor camps, make them... I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. Do you think, in the conversation, when you listen to me talk, do you think there's any major points that I'm getting wrong or something I don't understand or don't have a good, do you think, aside from not having like the history or the contextualized background?
I mean, at the kind of entry level you were talking, but I mean, this is like a conversation that needs to be supported by
data,
modeling.
Yeah.
Data and modeling.
Yeah,
right?
and that's kind of, and that's how I summarized our positions, is that we ideologically disagree, or ideologically we agree on all of the pros and cons, but what we would have to argue over are the specific numbers to find out who's right or wrong, right?
And it doesn't suffice to say, oh, there are positive externalities from factories, and we can't quantify them.
No, you would have to measure the estimated economic value of those externalities to see.
Yeah, that's
right?
just bullshit. This is something. If this dude went up like this in a seminar and told me something like that, I would say that then he should get the fuck out.
Sure, because you want an estimated value attached to all of these things,
Yes.
so you're arguing concrete
Yes.
numbers. Yeah, I understand. That's so
Yeah.
that's hard for me. Like, I can only go by holy shit. I can only go by like studies. I can never like I don't know what's going on. Finding this data on my own would be like really, really difficult, I think. Like, I don't know where I would even start to find the estimated value of a factory, average value of a factory in the United States, including externalities.
No, dude. But that's why we have guys like me around. Plenty of us, maybe too many. But then you go on to like Google Scholar and start entering a little bit, yeah, trying to find out who has estimated that. I mean, I'm not a macroeconomist, so I don't look into this, but there's got to be plenty of literature. So you would have to look at, okay, what are the benefits and costs of China's protectionist policy? Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you can find plenty of papers on this.
Sure.
And then in the wake of Trump, I'm pretty sure that people have also
started talking about protectionist policies again.
Modeled tariffs and looked at whether that's a sensible policy.
Do you agree that like South Korea? Would you agree that like South Korea practices very protectionist policies? Do you
I
know?
have absolutely no idea about South Korea.
Gotcha.
Sorry, buddy.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess I'll go and I guess I'll try to read around a little bit. Because I'm curious.
I'll try to find you something. Okay.
Gotcha. It seemed like when I went to do reading, but there might be confirmation bias. Maybe I'm only looking at the sources that agree with me. Most examples and most of the stuff that I found about protectionist policy, everything that I read seemed to be pretty bad. The only exception was Japan's economy. They were the only exception that I could find where they were a large economy that practiced massive protectionism post World War II. They pretty much closed off everything in order to build up their electronics industry, and that made them one of the biggest competitors in that realm in the world. That they're like one of the big shining examples. But other than Japan, like I just read like disaster after disaster after disaster of people trying to enact. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean. So sometimes things like that work. Also, they also work probably mostly in an era of rapid economic development, right?
Sure.
If the economic landscape is kind of unsure or not so clear about what things are going to work out, but maybe in this electronics sector, and we just have enough money to go to each and every one of these companies, then in the end, one of them is maybe ending up as a powerhouse, and we can reap the benefits from that. But just rebuilding a factory that is inefficient and hoping for the best, that's not going to do much.
Do you agree with my argument in general, or do you think it's short-sighted to say that if another country is subsidizing an industry and we're taking advantage of those lower prices, that they're effectively subsidizing us? Do you think that's a legitimate line to draw, or do you think that's a little bit naive in my assumption there?
So, I mean, it on kind of what you're selling them, right? If they're willing to eat the trade deficit, and or if they're willing to take the goods you're selling them, like for example financial goods, then all right, you're benefiting from not having a properly inefficient industry in your country.
Gotcha. So then that's a fair argument to make,
I guess.
Fuck you. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Also, something completely different, buddy.
Uh-oh. UBI? Oh no, sorry. Go
Huh?
ahead. I was gonna say universal
what?
basic income. Sorry, go ahead.
A buddy of mine did a paper about this. He calculated what it would cost to implement that in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
What the tax rate would be. So he modeled it as a flat tax, and it comes out at about 75% flat tax.
On income or like a value-added tax?
On income.
Isn't the point of a UBI is that it's supposed to replace all of your currently existing? Is that taking into account getting rid of all your existing welfare as well?
No, so business insurance and unemployment insurance is calculated into that. Retirement.
Oh, damn. That sounds pretty expensive.
Yeah, it is. So just a kind of a basic number. So the top margin tax rate in Germany now is 45%.
Gotcha.
Marginal one. Yeah. Okay. So that just in reference to UBI, but I saw that you had on the YouTube channel a dude talking about a flat tax. Yeah.
Oh, Harkton. Yeah.
Harkton.
Yeah.
That's the Harkton. Okay.
Yeah.
So at some point, a extreme aggressive taxation is always desirable.
At some point, a what? You cut off again. At some point, something.
We have to do a little stream, like 20 minutes, on why progressive taxation is necessary.
Oh, I think I understand that, but sure, if you want to, sure.
I would like to walk people through the so-called classic Molise problem, and then the insurance argument for risky income flows and why progressive taxation helps to compensate income shocks.
Gotcha.
Okay, but we don't need to do that now. So I think some question or
I think we're good.
Oh.
Wait, hello?
Can we also get Excuse Me, or is he gone?
Listen, Excuse Me is in the shitter right now, okay? Because he's a massive fucking Trump and he won't admit it. So we're boycotting him right now, okay? I did the Bayesian analysis on whether or not we're gonna let him come on to spread his propaganda, and right now he's in the Bayesian outhouse, so he's restricted.
Do you know why that argument is fucked?
Yes, I think. Bayesian analysis, in my opinion, I don't know anything about this. Okay, I only read a fucking Wikipedia article. Okay, I'm warning you now. Do you have like an academic background with Bayesian analysis?
So I'm pretty well versed in statistics, at least.
Okay.
I didn't do a module on Bayesian analysis, but I'm what you would call a frequentist.
Okay, so it seems to me that Bayesian analysis is highly effective when you have discrete things you can measure. So let me give an example of that. I want to do a Bayesian analysis on whether or not my kid will go to school. So I can measure things like, or on whether or not my kid goes to college. So what I can do is I can say, okay, did I go to college? Yes, but I dropped out. The percentage of children who go to college with parents that dropped out is X. I can go, does Nathan have two parents? Yes. Does Nathan come from a middle-class family? Yes. That I can use like a sort of Bayesian analysis to compile a bunch of discrete numbers to try to get some type of probability for him going to school, right? I would start with some a priori that would be maybe how many kids go to college, period, or maybe I would make it more specific, how many broken household kids because his mom and I are split, something like that, and then I would build my statistic argument from there. That seems to be my impression of how Bayesian analysis works. So using Bayesian analysis as some pseudo form to figure out like the probability of somebody being guilty, like Trump in a collusion case, is really ridiculous because we're talking about a bunch of like one-time events that can't really be measured in any statistical way, and everything becomes incredibly subjective. So using Bayesian analysis totally falls apart. That was my interpretation.
So beautiful.
Okay.
So
thanks.
beautiful.
I try my hardest.
Okay. It's actually exactly that. First, so Bayesian analysis uses the combination of a so-called prior and a posterior probability, right? And the prior is kind of how likely you think, without looking at the data, that a certain event is. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. And in Exkelsme's case, he constructs that as a historical probability.
Okay.
Where he looks at the
no president has been
record
impeached
of,
for something like this or something, yeah.
Yeah. And then he takes the pieces of evidence, all right, which are whatever the Washington Post is putting up now, and then he adjusts his probability according to whatever measure he thinks is correct in that case. But okay, the main thing is in statistics you want to sample many of the events that you have, which you then want to treat as a random variable, and where you want to look at the distribution of that random variable.
Sure.
Okay, and in that case, the random variable would be did a certain president collude with the Russian government? Well, you can't really sample from that random variable very often. Okay, and so you can't really drive away from the prior probability a lot because you have very limited data points.
Without everything becomes very subjective and not quantitative at all, right?
Yeah, because then everything is driven by your prior probability and not by any data that you have. A lot of weight on a prior that has very shaky foundations, if you will. Okay. So you did get it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right. And the what was the other item? Oh yeah, the fucking thing about the stupid immigration shit, which I also argued with Excuse Me about on the Reddit.
Which immigration shit?
Yeah, the Borgias shit. Where he had this this article. Where he
I
was
think I read
triumphal.
that. And some of the things he
I
said
know that.
seemed kind of dumb. I don't remember if I talked about this or not, but I read some of his lines there.
You did talk about that.
Okay, yeah.
It was kind of absurd because he was kind of in glowing terms reviewing Trump's policies, which closed down kind of seasonal worker programs, and then was lauding that shot raised prices on kind of hospitality workers or some shit, because Mexicans couldn't come and fill those jobs. And he praised that in terms of, immigration does have effects on wages. I was right all along. So he was kind of having a pedantic victory dance about his study results. Yeah, I mean, completely misplaced at that point.
Sure.
Because in effect, because of these kind of stupid policies, then people have to pay more to people that are not actually being more productive.
Sure.
It's
essentially
exactly
it's like a different. Yeah, I was gonna say exactly that. It's like a different price floor, right?
Yep.
One thing that
Okay.
irritates me when I get linked to things, and again, like I know that my knowledge is always like very basic, and this is something that really irritates me. And I know that there were a bunch of guys in the politics chat. Do you know modern monetary theory or whatever?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, when I get like when I
heard about it, but
Uh-huh.
it's not something that is academically discussed.
Okay. Whenever I get linked to things where people want to talk about economic policies, like one of the things I wish I could remember, I downloaded a long time ago. I downloaded like some 101 class of like economics, and I listened to the whole thing. And it seems like whenever I'm listening to somebody academically discuss, or at least somebody honestly discuss like an economic thing, there's two sides to everything. You know, like if you do this, this will happen, but this can also happen, or this will happen, and this can also happen. I feel like when a lot of people are pushing an agenda, when they talk about a particular economic policy, they only ever bring up one thing that really bothers me. So like somebody might say something like, if you increase the minimum wage, all you're going to do is increase the prices to consumers. It's like, well, that's not all you do. You also raise the wages of some people, right? Or on the flip side, people will say, well, if you increase the minimum wage, everybody gets paid more. Okay, well, sure, some people get paid more. Maybe everybody does if you raise it enough, but also everybody has to pay more for the cost of goods. I notice that a lot of people do that when talking about economic policy, and anytime there's like a new idea, like, yo, look at this one thing, like it'll do this, but then they never talk about the cons of anything or the opportunity cost for anything. That really, really, really fucking bothers me.
Yeah, so the reasons for that. Okay, on the one hand, it's clearly something that has to do with ideological convictions.
Yeah,
okay?
selling a narrative.
Then the other thing that's playing into it is kind of a certain economic partisanship. Okay, in kind of academic circles between more free market oriented economists and steering kinds. Yeah. In a rough sense, if you want to get that vulgar, kind of like the difference between something like a Chicago school economist and a Keynesian. Yeah. Although these distinctions are getting blurrier by the second.
Everything is blurry in politics and every theory. It seems like everything's blurry. Yeah.
So because we're getting much better with data, people are stopping these ideological battles. Okay, because that's just being resolved. And most of the time it's agenda pushing, and then there's also something that has to do with the way knowledge in economics is disseminated. So for example, if I publish a paper, yeah, I want many people to read it. Okay, I don't only want to have economists read it, but I also want to have an effect on the media landscape.
Yeah, you want like a newspaper to pick up and make a headline or something, so that yeah.
Exactly. So, and then I take kind of the centerpiece of my paper, the thing I really believe about the paper, and put it into like 3 paragraphs, and then I'm gonna submit it to whatever, Washington Post, Financial Times, whatever the fuck. Yeah. And then a journalist takes that and says, "Oh, that's still too complicated. Rewrite it so that everyone can understand it."
Yeah.
And then you're really boiling it down to one side. Okay.
There's
and
no room for nuance. Yeah.
Exactly. And then if you read the papers, mostly there, because you have to get through peer review, there are a lot more caveats about the certain thing that supposedly has been discovered. Okay. But if people want to push their paper in the media, then it's gonna get barbaric in a sense. Yeah. You're gonna butcher the nuance to have an impact.
Gotcha.
Okay. And so that's the main thing, and that's why everything seems so polarized. I did the same thing when I was discussing a certain retirement incentive policy in in Germany.
Mhm.
I was also on TV, and the questions were just so pointed that I didn't have time for nuance.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're fishing for a narrative, pretty much.
Yep. Yeah. You're not gonna withstand so it's just a thing about the medium
Mhm.
through which that is disseminated.
Yeah.
And
If somebody asks
people
you a
are-
question like, do you think that minimum wage increased the wages to people that work, minimum wage jobs, like you don't really have time to go into the pros and cons of increasing the floor of labor, whatever,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. And most of the time then everyone leans some type of way based on the knowledge they have, and you can assume that it's not necessarily in bad faith
Mhm.
most of the time, except if people have a proven record of being in bad faith. Then they have to give an opinion and have to be concrete, yeah? And then these statements pop out, right? But if you read papers, there's where you can find the nuance, but nobody reads academic papers in economics.
Yeah, sure.
For that matter, any science. I mean, just look at the AI discussion you had, all right?
Fuck. Oh, God.
That was some of the most retarded shit. And this dude, Glinks, is a super memer. I was laughing the whole time.
Oh,
and
shit.
this is kind of the bad shit that is happening because
Okay, but Bill
this dude-
Gates, dude. One time in one statement, he said that maybe it might be a problem in the future. Don't you see the problem here?
Yeah, I do, and that is why I'm going to kill myself now. No, dude, this is kind of you have serious authors in the field of AI who are kind of weighing the scenarios. What could happen if we discover AI, and what could be the pitfalls? Okay, then you write extensive research papers about that and how you could stop it. Okay, just because it's a subject of research, and then it gets bastardized in the press in the same way. Yeah, and then a dude like Blinks reads that stuff. Recipe for disaster.
Gotcha.
So that's not only a problem in economics. I mean, economics is pretty bad because there's no unified methodology in economics. People can be pretty dishonest about how they're presenting statistics. People can be pretty creative in the methodology they choose. So there's a lot more wiggle room for being pointed to one side or another, right?
Gotcha. Okay. Oh, is that good?
Yeah. No. I'm gonna write you at some point. I've just finished some work, some papers, and so I have some time to people in the chat about the necessity of progressive taxation. Doesn't that sound exciting, guys?
We're gonna have that chat sometime, okay?
Yeah. Bye.
Have fun. See you later, buddy.
Bye.
My dudes. Will you stream your view of D&D? No, I think that's only going to be on Trump's stream. I would imagine. Hey, Homestead, that's where my family lives. You can have tornadoes and hurricanes? I had no idea that was even possible. Is it like hurricaning there right now, or? What happened to Blaire White? I think she's dead. Apparently she hasn't posted to her Snapchat in 16 hours. She last messaged me 16 hours ago. She hasn't tweeted or... Oh, she didn't pick up. Uh-oh. Oh, hey, how's it going? You guys doing okay? Hello? I'm doing fine. I'm not living in a hurricane right now, though. Is it storming a lot there, or is it started yet, or? Gotcha. Are you in like a hurry, or are you in like a tornado warning right now, or what? Does warning mean the same thing there? Like, I think for Nebraska, if there's a warning, that means there's been a funnel that's touched down, right? Hmm. Oh, you don't have tornado sirens? Gotcha. Do you have a good place to go to in that house since you don't have a basement? The hall, gotcha. Mm-hmm. Does it, is it like raining lightly there now, or is it raining heavily, or what is it like? What's the weather? Okay. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of like water, no flooding or anything, right? Yeah, you are until I think for another hour or two tonight. Yeah. Yeah, for another hour or two. There's a Twitter you can follow that shows it. NWS. It's NWS tornado. I guess for the national weather. Hello? Hey, I'm gonna call you back, okay? Because your phone is freaking out, I think. Uh-oh. It's the aliens. Signs. They're coming. Yeah, sorry. Oh yeah, so until 9:15 your time, or I'm sorry, 8:15 your time, there's a tornado warning for Homestead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Twitter account is like NWS Tornado. I think they have an app too, but you can see yeah, like those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Do you guys have like water and stuff? And you always have way too much fucking food, and you can always cut up the cats and eat them if you need them, right? Would you eat the cats if you were starving to death, or would you just die with them around you? All right. I'll tell Nathan that his grandma chose the life of the cats over keeping herself alive. It's on you. Okay. Mm-hmm. 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 The water and everything's still working, right? Wait, if you lose power? How does that work? Wait, you're not connected to a municipal water source? Oh. No, obviously, of course. Yeah. I thought you guys were connected to city water. Oh, I didn't know that. Damn, that sucks. You let me drink the water when I go out there? Why didn't you warn me? Well, yeah, but what about the water out of the sink? I've been drinking that stuff. I didn't know that. What if I would have died out there? How do you know that? Do you test the water yourself? Do you have a private company that comes out and tests your well water to make sure that it's... Mm-hmm. Yep, okay. Well, hey, have fun. Good luck. If it gets really bad, give me a call. Take some pictures or something. Send them to me before your house gets blown up. Just want to see it. I love you too. Well, I don't know. You'll probably survive it. Don't worry, you'll survive it. Maybe it'll go west like they're saying, and then you can be smug and tell me later that you were right all along, even though the sample size is really stupid, so good luck. What? Oh. You saw your buddy Rush Limbaugh had to leave too, even though he was telling everybody it was a liberal... You don't believe hurricanes are liberal propaganda, do you? Okay, because Rush Limbaugh does. I'm just checking. Okay. Oh, he really meant it. No, it wasn't a joke. He really meant it. Okay. Maybe. Alright. I love you. I'll see you later. It's okay. I love you. Bye. Yeah. Alright. Sure thing. Yep. I love you too. Bye. Maybe Rush Limbaugh was just memeing. Oh, fuck, guys. That one guy messaged me. No, he wants to know if he can come on and talk. Should we do it? This guy? Girl? I don't actually know. This person?
Then don't complain to people who try to warn you that bio was wrong, because we have. And like countless of people try to tell him why is this wrong. And he makes videos saying, no, I didn't say that. I don't say that.
I'm gonna straw poll this one, okay? Do we venture into the darkness and debate this person? Yes. No. Don't you get into contact with the D&D people? Yeah, that's in about 35 minutes, 40 minutes. That's really scary. I didn't think of that the water system wouldn't be pressurized somehow, but I guess if it's well watered, literally is collected via rain, right? So that's my guess, right? Or water tables or something. So I guess it wouldn't be, but typically if you're connected to municipal water, all of the water systems that exist in your house, or at least everything I'm familiar with, maybe this isn't true for everybody, but I'm pretty sure they should work via pressure. So even if you lose power, you should still be able to turn a faucet on and have water come out, because it's like there's pressure from the outside that causes the water to move, right? But I guess with a well, if you lose your electricity, you just have no water either. That sucks.
You need to leave. If you have been ordered to evacuate, you need to leave now. This is your last chance to make a good decision.
Damn.
Evacuations are in place in areas across the state. More than 6.5 million Floridians have been ordered to evacuate. Do not put yourself or your family's life at risk. Now is the time to do the right thing for your family. School buses are aiding in evacuations. Please take advantage of this service.
Yep. Thanks, Option Select, for this wonderfully educational video. I'm sure it is.
See what Charles is up to.
Hey! What's up, Sam? How you doing? Come on in. You're here early.
Chuck, I'm kind of thirsty, I'll be honest with you. I've been out there on the streets all day.
You know, if you feel like maybe giving your immune system a charge, a nice, good tap will do the trick. And I know how to make tap straight fresh.
You can make fresh tap?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, is this spliced together? This guy sounds just like Sam Hyde. Oh, sorry. Is it him? Like and then it's just like editing, or is it just a guy that sounds like him?
Totally from scratch. You get a nice, cool glass.
Or they have like the same mannerisms, like the way that they talk. It's not the same voice, but they have like the same mannerisms.
Put it down over here. But you see, the thing about glasses these days is that they gotta be sterilized. See what I'm saying? Hairspray.
Is it him? Okay, it's just edited together. Okay,
There
okay,
we
okay.
go. The first thing I start off with is a nice, sweet apple. Okay?
Yeah,
There
okay,
we go.
okay,
And I
okay.
only take a little bit, like.
This
So
is
we have
his
to
show. I know it's his show, you fucking inbred. But I didn't know if him and him were the same person.
Actually sterilize this apple real quick. There we go. Take a bite. It's clean.
I'm full. I'm so full. What I like
No, it's not him. This isn't him. They look so different.
to start off with is a little bit of gunpowder.
Now, Charles, are you being serious that this is how municipal tap water's made?
These guys like have the same way of speaking though. Holy shit. Kill yourself. Everybody in chat that says you're the same person, fucking end your life.
Oh yeah. If you ever go to what is it, Flint, Michigan, or something, you're gonna have.
Where are they from? How do they sound? How do they speak exactly the same?
Sulfur water, things lighting on fire. You got egg water. You got all different kinds of stuff. So you know, people are really used to this flavor, and you know what else they're used to? They're used to taking it in the ass. As in, they pay taxes and they get that water, and they do nothing about it. They might scream a little bit and say, "Oh, our water's bad," but they end up not doing very much. So it doesn't really matter. So I like to emulate that sort of that sentiment of paying taxes, paying really high taxes and getting nothing in return, not even clean water. See, it's got tissues in it. Half shower, half bowl. A little bit of toilet water. It's not so bad. It's not as bad as people think. The creamy paste. No, it's not ready. It's just not ready. You want to give it a little bit of like
showmanship.
Showmanship, yeah, and a little bit more spice. Sometimes I'm feeling like really angry. Like I don't know if it's a testosterone thing, but the problem with anger is that an angry population of people, when their government doesn't even provide them with clean water or even like fix the streets potholes, you know, when the taxes get like that, people with a lot of anger or testosterone usually flip cars over and sometimes even kill politicians. And I hate that shit. You can't have that. No. So I usually put birth control in every concoction I make. It's gone from a tap water to a martini now, so we're really just enjoying it. But the original recipe, still just as, ugh. Tap. Guys, this stuff came out so thick.
Thick.
I was gonna spice yours up a bit. Do you like it a lot? Okay, guys, thanks for enjoying this tap water. We should all taste it. Here's to life. Here's to you guys. This is Monster. This one's Monster.
Okay. I'm going to I think I'm just go get something to eat, and then I'll do my D&D memes.
Yes, hello. I was wondering if you could play that song again.
Which one, man?
The one that goes.
And the boom. Skia. Boom, boom. Boom, boom.
Venezuela.
Oh my god. Another Glinkster video.
Venezuela is going through an economic collapse. Unemployment is at an all-time high, minimum wage is $12.53 a month due to massive inflation, and food shortages have become the norm. This desperate situation has led to mounting tensions and chaos in the streets. Caracas, the nation's capital, is now one of the most dangerous places in the world. But it's not as dangerous as the wilderness in RuneScape.
Do you think... Okay, I genuinely don't know. Do you think people realize when they're sucked into this whirlwind of shit sourcing? When you unironically are posting back-to-back headlines from like Daily Wire, The Telegraph, The Sun, Breitbart, New York Post. Like, do people not realize when they're like sucked into this whirlwind of bullshit? Like, are they completely oblivious? What do you think?
Can sell on the Grand Exchange for gold. By doing this, they can make around 500,000 RuneScape gold an hour, which translates to roughly 50 cents an hour. And while you may think that 50 cents an hour isn't much, it's really not, it is better than poverty. An article by an author named Fizzerman explains why farming is worth it for these Venezuelans. More advanced players will know that repetitively killing the boss Zolra can earn around
You might want to retweet Trump's announcement. Whoa, we have a spicy Trump tweet? Oh.
Incredible job, we appreciate it. And families affected by what we're supposed to.
One of the biggest hurricanes that's ever been seen. It's tremendous. It's going to be a disaster like nothing we've ever seen before. Okay, this guy didn't message me back on Twitter, so I think I'm just gonna get food and we're gonna do our D&D stuff, okay? I'm sorry. Okay, I love you guys. It's been fun. Stay safe. Cappuccino, Mappuccino, Happuccino, Cappuccino. D&D-accino. Link to D&D streams? I'll probably retweet it. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.